転生
The Cursed Shinobi. A Tale in the Percy Jackson World, Part 2. Disclaimer. Don't own PJO or Naruto. And this is a continuation of the Fearless series found in Olympian one-offs. Lunar Phases. The Cursed Knight, PT2. Rage. It was a chemically induced reaction that caused mortals to lash out, to seek to harm others. It was a passionate feeling in the sense that it blinded the feeler to everything around them. This emotion prone to bloodlust-inducing phenomena was favored by Ares explicitly, but other gods of Olympus were not unfamiliar with it. January 12, 2008. Artemis has only felt true rage a few times in her long life. Her first brush with true rage came about during the incident with Actaeon. Just thinking of the lust-driven man now, millennia after his death, made her ichor boil and her fletching fingers twitch. After that was the event that took her first lieutenant from her, an act she's never forgiven her father for. More recently, the audacity committed by Atlas and Luke Castellan. Trapping her in such a blatant way, with such obvious bait, would follow her as one of the most humiliating events of her immortal life. Killing yet another of her friends in front of her only made the memory hurt that much more. It drove her to fight harder that day and work her hunters to their immortal bones. At least Bianca seemed to be managing just fine in her new role as lieutenant for now. Yet, that incensed feeling paled in comparison to what she currently felt toward her twin. There hadn't even yet been a word invented in any known language that could express what she felt. What do you mean you lost him again? Artemis snarled, taking one step closer to her brother. Apollo had one job she trusted him with outside of his Olympian duties, and she barely trusted him to perform those with any sort of professionalism, keep just one of his amazingly awesome all-seeing eyes he so greatly loved to brag about on Naruto. She'd lost a dear friend due to her own fault already and, from what she'd understood, nearly lost him on the same quest. Her twin had earned a second chance at being her son's legal guardian from his granted support against Atlas and at the winter solstice meeting, and in less than a month he'd squandered it. Artemis really shouldn't have been as surprised as she was. Her twin brother was an unparalleled idiot and, were it not for her son's mortal blood, she'd sometimes thought Hermes, the annoying, slippery little fool, was Naruto's father. The boy took to her lessons in hiding and stealth like a fish to water. And now that he was without his enchanted circlet, her head started to pound. Apollo, hold still. Artemis lifted her hands as her power shone through her eyes. I'm going to strangle you, stuff your body and mount you outside of my temple as a warning for the rest of Olympus. I have an idea of where he is. Apollo quickly backed up, keeping her more than an arm's length away. The goddess let her hands fall and narrowed her eyes. Then tell me, and I shall go fetch him myself. About that, Apollo swallowed. The hesitation did not fill her with confidence for her son's safety. His next words only confirmed those fears. I need an oath on the sticks that you won't freak out, first. You. The audacious request did very little to dissuade her from making good on her declaration. Apollo quickly flashed away to the other side of her temple. Artemis, I'm serious. He pointed at her. I'm not saying another word until I hear you swear it. Fine. She snapped. I swear in the sticks that I will not freak out over whatever news you give me of Naruto's location. Thunder boomed and Artemis' glare became cold. Now tell me where my son is, Apollo. Boston. A beat passed. Artemis stared at her twin, jaw agape. The throbbing in her head started up again tenfold. Boston. He got a job in Boston. Apollo shrugged. Then looked away and rubbed his neck. After his hotel room was shot up by some mortal mafia men. Artemis could only make a small sound of disbelief as her head felt ready to split in half. Come on, sis, he's your kid. Apollo grinned, but she saw the weak falter in his eyes. He's handled us easily and lived on his own for practically a decade now. I'm sure he's fine. What happened after that failed attempt at reassurance, Artemis could not say for she had completely blacked out. It wasn't often that the twins interacted in mixed personas. Roman and Greek split personalities usually didn't mesh well. Take the Civil War, for example. That was a mess on its own without the gods, say in it. Not to mention their already rocky sibling relationship took on drastic new elements whenever one as a Greek would interact with another as a Roman. Whenever the Roman aspect of Apollo interacted with Artemis, he greatly aggravated her, and he knew it. More often than not, Phoebus Apollo got his Greek counterpart in trouble just for the laughs. The same could not be said of the inverted pair, for surprisingly Diana was more forgiving of the Greek Apollo's antics. This was mostly because she attributed his foolishness to his being born in a barbaric land, and during an unenlightened era. However, there was one topic where Diana was somehow more attentive than Artemis was, and that was whenever the subject of her adopted son came up. Diana, more often than not, would be the aspect to pick and choose what days Apollo could whisk the boy away for some cultural lessons. She also had the tendency to be more actively protective of him. The first time Apollo had lost track of the boy, he awoke after a week of riding bitch to Phoebus, panicked flight from their twins' Roman fury. He'd awoken, face down in the middle of a crater, sore all over, and had to seek out Asclepius for help. The only positive to come out of that whole incident was that he was accredited for New Rome's new public pool. Now, there was probably little chance of him emerging from the coming punishment a victor in any way, shape or form. Apollo. The cool, stern voice that left the goddess, lips made the god of the sun backpedal towards her temple's door. Diana. Hey, sis. Long time, no see. I was just about to get a head start on scoping out Boston, his back hit something solid. Strange, he could have sworn there was an entryway there. His eyes widened in horrified realization. It would seem that fleeing was no longer an option. But groveling still is. Apollo's sense of self-preservation screamed at him. Diana, please. Apollo pleaded, still trying to pass through the solid wall behind him as the Roman stalked forward. We already know he knew Frere, let's just ask Father. A calloused pair of pale fingers pressed his lips together with a firm grip. Jupiter will not save you from the punishment that is to come, Graces. Diana's silver eyes glowed. Why you swore on the SHTYX? Artemis was the one who swore to show you leniency. I have not. Apollo felt his ichor freeze as Diana smirked. She released his face and snapped her fingers. The temple opened once more. But, given our shared parentage, I will be fair and give you an 8-second head start. Better yet, if you can find Naruto before my hunters, I will even spare your life. Seriously, sis. That was a dark joke, even for Diana. Zeus, let alone Jupiter, wouldn't let the sun god die so swiftly. Then again, the lone rational portion of Apollo's brain noted, he's already in super paranoid mode because of what happened to Artemis last winter and Talia Grace's exposure to Egyptian magic. 1. Apollo sprinted to his chariot so fast, he may have very well turned into particles of light. He'd barely turned over the engine when the first arrow smashed through the windshield and hit the upholstery in the back. Oh, come on, Diana. Apollo scowled as he fixed the damage to his ride and tried to think of an appropriate disguise for it. That is so not okay. Leave my chick magnet out of it. The next arrow that smashed through the windshield managed to clip a few golden hairs off of his head and stabbed into the headrest above his right ear. With his astounding sight, Apollo stared at the goddess who'd yet to leave her temple. Diana's cold silver gaze had little hint of forgiveness in it, and dare he say it resembled the look she had on her face after she'd dealt with that jackhole Acteon. She drew another arrow and pulled back on the string. Instantly, trillions of possible futures started flooding into Apollo's head, giving him a small migraine. There were not many where this next shot of hers ended well for him. Survival instincts overrode his enormous pride, and he floored it. He had to find his nephew before his twin actually killed him. January 14, 2008. Well, that's problematic. Naruto stared at the massive gate that was chained and padlocked shut by the city, judging by the closed notice hanging from the lock. A historical placard made of bronze-tinted steel was screwed into the brick beside it, explaining the history of the 8-story brick mansion that apparently hid, from the more preternaturally unaware, a hotel. The teen scowled and looked down at the dead cell phone in his hand. He'd attempted to call Alf once he got here, but his battery was dead. Given that his apartment was attacked by the tracksuit mafia, put in the JCPD's holding cell for a night, and traveling down the East Coast by foot, Alf had insisted upon it so he could finalize some details with the hotel. He shouldn't have been too surprised. It was still irritating all the same. Uncle Fred probably broke the voicemail by now, Naruto thought with a snort as he pocketed his phone. His uncle was probably going to be upset that he left the apartment, but he really had no one to blame but himself. He might not have been a demigod, but he wasn't known for his vast attention span either. He crossed his arms and glared at the lock again. Just hop the gate, boy. The fox snarled, adding lowly under his breath. Sage, preserve me from this simpleton's stupidity. You're in a mood. Naruto mused, filing the softer comment away as something to ask about later, and looked around. The last thing he needed was to be busted by a local cop for breaking and entering. Seeing none in sight, odd given it was Monday, he jumped up and grabbed the top of the gate. With the strength and agility that most professional gymnasts would envy, Naruto pulled himself over the iron gate and landed with hardly a sound. It was only upon his landing did his comment get a response from his grumbling companion. I'm only in a mood because you've been gawking at that stupid gate for 10 minutes. That can't be the only reason. Well, it is. And people call gods petty. Naruto mumbled as he walked up to the giant wooden doors bearing iron. He grabbed one of the wolf head door knockers and used it to its design, before waiting. And waiting. 10 minutes passed and a raven cawed behind him. Naruto glanced at the tree where the bird sat. Ethereal green eyes stared back from the bird's head. Well, that's only extremely unsettling. He turned to face the raven fully. I don't know if you're Hugin or Munin, but regardless you can get Odin to open this door for me, right? I'm here for the lifeguard job. The raven tilted its head and scrutinized him anew for another moment. Without prompting, it took off to the sky and disappeared behind the manor. He stared at its last known location and pinched the bridge of his nose. Why did I think that would work? It wasn't a terrible idea. The fox snorted. Except for the whole bird part of it. I hate birds. They're loud and annoying. You're definitely going through something. Naruto sighed as he started rubbing his head. Before he could consider what to do next, there was a soft creak at the door behind him. He let his hand fall and arched a brow. That's convenient. Think it's a trap. Could be. It wouldn't be too surprising. Gonna spring it. Probably. It was the only way to get into the building. Gonna eat whoever set it up. We've gone over this, Fox. His eyes rolled. That was an argument they shared over the course of their trip to Boston. Particularly whenever they stumbled across any wayward hikers. The fox would make a snide comment, then suggest eating them, and Naruto would refuse. Right, right. The fox huffed. Gonna kill whoever set it up. I'm going to speak with them. If it gets violent, it gets violent. I'll take what I can get. Naruto shook his head and went to the door. He'd barely nudged it open when an otherworldly force took hold of the front of his shirt. He planted his feet and tightened his grip on the rim of the doors, scowling at the dark interior. The wood splintered in his grasp and he felt something beneath his feet give. Yes. It's a trap. Oh ho ho, these guys are so dead now. I hate magic. Naruto grumbled before he was pulled in and the door slammed shut behind him. Two blue eyes glared at the knock upon her office door. Gunia. A muffled voice called from the other side. You're needed in the foyer. Gunia Thorsdottir, captain of Odin's Valkyries, Thane of Valhalla, all-around badass extraordinaire, groaned in frustration. Not 20 minutes prior, she had explicitly requested not being bothered while going over reports from her Valkyries. There were so many potential souls to fight for Valhalla, and so many more reports to go through. Normally, it was Odin's job to determine who would be welcomed in the heroic mead hall and who would go to Freya's land, Folkvanger, but the Allfather was away, on one of his many, wandering trips. That left the sorting of souls to the Valkyrie captain, and, while she would happily vote for their placement within Hotel Valhalla as one of the Thanes, Gunila's eyes were starting to cross from going over 400 reports in the past hour. There were thousands more yet still to be read. It wouldn't be half as bad if there was an order to it. Resigned to dealing with the mess before her later, Gunia rose from her desk and opened her office door. She glared at the Valkyrie that stood before her, a girl of 17 years with dark hair and green eyes. I had explicitly requested not to be disturbed, Irene. She growled. Yes, I know, but, there's a mortal in the foyer. Whoever brought them in shall submit their report as the others do, Gunia drawled, only for Irene to cut her off. It's the boy that was with Nightshade. What? Thorsdottir blinked. Irene repeated herself and Gunia stared at her for another minute more. Slowly, a smirk spread across her face and she crossed her arms. Well, who was the one to bring him in? She'd have to push to get them something nice. A spa brochure or something. He entered alone and, Irene hesitated. Alive. Beg pardon. He's still alive. Gunila's arms fell to her sides and her smirk fell into a scowl. She twisted her arms and a maul of bone steel appeared in one hand while a sword of the same make appeared in the other. Then let us remedy that. Alf is dead to me. Naruto caught the blade of yet another burly teenage boy wearing a green Hotel Valhalla shirt and floral swim trunks with the underside of his axe. His open hand lashed out like a pit viper's and he struck the boy's throat. While he choked on air, Naruto used his stomach as a stepping stone, walking up his physique to launch himself over to the front desk, where his target watched with a sneer on his face. This all came about because the concierge, who was apparently a rule stickler in the worst way, couldn't accept that a clear-sighted mortal had been brought into Hotel Valhalla alive. He knew the Norse and their ilk took the word stubborn and stretched the meaning of the word to new levels, but this was getting ridiculous. If you are not worthy, we will make you worthy. Another armed teenager roared as she tackled him out of the air. Naruto hit the ground with a grunt, but kicked the girl away. He got back to his feet in time for a series of thumps to catch his attention. He looked around with a frown on his face. There were suddenly a lot of armored girls around him. One in particular stood out above the others, both literally and figuratively. By guesstimation, she was near his age, but built with more muscle than he had. Her hair a paler hue of blonde compared to his vibrant gold, and her eyes thunderous blues like that of his half-blooded friend. It's almost as if that female you were courting buffed up, took a flat iron pan to the face, covered herself in hammers and then poorly dyed her hair. The fox snorted. It took all of Naruto's willpower not to laugh aloud at the images that conjured up. That was made an easy task when one word stood out amongst the rest. He glared sharply at his arm. What do you mean, courting? Were you not? Was it just to be a blast? The bitch had her own term for this. The fox grumbled. The word eludes me. Look alive, the Oni is speaking. Mortal, the girl said with a scowl, her voice echoing over the copious jeering and drawing his attention once more. You trespass on sacred ground. You will have one chance to explain yourself. I'm here for the lifeguard position, he said. He looked around at the dumbfounded stares sent his way and shrugged. If it's already been filled, I'll just leave. Who sent you? The girl asked, frowning. Frere. Describe him. Hawkish nose, blonde hair, crooked chin. You forgot a sneaky bastard. The fox pointed out. Naruto ignored him. Odd. The girl willed away her weapons and crossed her arms before looking him over. You were dead not a month prior to today, I saw it. How did you survive? Magic. He brandished his marked forearm for a moment before tucking it away. Is that so? She asked. He nodded. Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. We shall see what the Thanes think. Thanes. Naruto frowned, unfamiliar with the term. The ruling council board of the hotel, she explained, gesturing for him to follow. He did, slipping his axe back to its earring form and placing it back on his left ear. The Valkyrie kept speaking as he followed her. Lord Odin has the final say, but when the Thanes rule something, it often goes over smoothly. Naruto was half listening, focused on the pelt-covered, armored lass in front of him. What was with a female's hip sway? Why did it always draw his eye? Stupid hormones. Alf would be forgiven for everything he put the mortal through if he'd just do away with the accursed chemical changes going on in Naruto's brain. And I thought the red-headed bitch's hormonal years with that blonde idiot were bad. The fox grumbled. I can only imagine what your younger years were like. Okay. 1. Who is this poor woman you keep referencing and what did she ever do to you? 2. They weren't, and still aren't, over fast enough. Were you listening? The Valkyrie asked, standing in front of a large set of double doors. When'd they get here? When had she turned around? How long had he not been paying attention? Mortal, stop staring at my face. Stupid and $$ hormones. And here I was thinking you were the blonde idiot's child. The fox snorted. Clearly, you got his looks alone. Sorry, I zone out a lot when I'm not fighting. You're a terrible liar. Quote. What was your name again? Naruto asked in an attempt to change the subject. The girl smirked and crossed her arms. Brave of you to ask after staring at my ass. She leaned in a bit towards him. Then again, most lack the stones to ask for it at all. Amazon alarms were blaring in his head. I suddenly have the feeling I'm not going to like working here. Shame. As far as I'm concerned, you're hired. The Valkyrie said with a small smile. He leaned back from her. How in the world was he supposed to respond to that? Her smile cracked a bit more and her shoulders gave a slight tremor as she leaned back. Let's just hope the rest of the Thanes agree. Be a waste to have you killed and sent to the Ginnungagap. Bless you. You have by coming here. The Valkyrie smirked and tapped his nose, making him go cross-eyed while he spluttered. Don't fret, mortal, 'tis but some fun. You're too young for my tastes. Her smirk fell with her next words as a look of grave seriousness followed. Cute as you are, I'll still kill you if you were to do anything to advance the coming of Ragnarok. Oh ho ho, I'm starting to like this one. The fox chuckled while Naruto faltered for words while his hormones waged rebellion in his mind against his greater ego. He would not let this back and forth end with him being made the fool by a technicality. I am not cute. He growled. What? No. Stupid hormone-addled brain. Focus. You're right. Ha. She agreed. You're adorable. What? Like a kitten. What? The fox burst into laughter. You. Naruto settled for glaring daggers at the girl, who smiled at him and patted his cheek condescendingly. He knocked her hand away as he felt his blood boil. You're a feisty one. You may just last longer than the last lifeguard. That was a red flag. The Valkyrie turned and put her hands on the door behind her. A mighty shove and the doors creaked open before the Valkyrie turned back to him. The name is Gunia Thorsdottir, mortal. Welcome to Hotel Valhalla. January 20, 2008. Naruto quickly found out that a lifeguard was not Hotel Valhalla's version of a pool safety official. No, the lifeguard was essentially the primary target in a widespread game of killer. Only in this game, the masses used actual weapons in an attempt to kill one individual. The reason the hotel hired outside help to act as lifeguards was to evaluate the heroes of the modern age and the skills of the heroes within the hotel. Not to mention, it was a moot point to use an already chosen occupant in a hotel where the legitimate occupants could never die. Yeah, fun fact he learned in his first hour on the job, the hotel's occupants, called Einherjar, were resurrected upon their deaths. He nearly had a panic attack after one axe-happy Viking-looking teenager. You got a hell of a swing, mortal. Name's half-born Gunderson, he'd introduce himself later, attempted to blindside him, and literally lost his head and hands for his troubles. Gunia was kind enough to enforce a time-out to explain that to him. An hour later, she tried to crush his skull with her maul while he was preoccupied with looking for a bathroom. At that moment, Naruto didn't regret decapitating her. That was a week prior. It was day 8 and Naruto still remained alive. The only times he could rest were during the breaks for meals and combat practice. The second was the only one he was allowed to observe, but not participate in. There'd been several close calls. Members of the 64th floor had attempted to drop a slab of limestone on him no less than 4 hours after his game started. Halfborn and his fellows from the 19th floor dogged him endlessly on the second day. Gunia would make a daily challenge to him in single combat. Thus far it had only happened in the most inopportune times. Other Einherjar utilized pathetically generic schemes in an attempt to kill him, i.e., numbers. It had only nearly worked the first time, when he hadn't been aware of their resurrection abilities. At the moment, Naruto was curled up in a storage closet on the 104th floor, attempting to catch some sleep. He was almost surprised by a literal bomb in his supplied bedroom on the 19th floor, warned only by the faint smell of gunpowder and the fox's astute senses. For the past 3 days, he'd been too paranoid to stay in one place for too long, and moved floors every 6 to 7 hours. A creak in the floorboard outside the storage closet's door made him crack his eyes open. He tightened his grip on the handle of his axe. Soft whispering made him control his breathing. Could be busted for this. Oh, you should be focused on the life. I won't work with a blasf. Ill intent. The fox rumbled. Not aimed at us. Naruto closed his eyes, but continued to listen. The voices bickered for a moment longer before wood broke and a scream rang out. Metal clashed for several seconds and grunts sounded beneath it. The familiar sound of non-consensual bloodletting signaled the end of the conflict. Curiosity getting the best of him, Naruto slunk over to the door and peered through the keyhole. A lone figure wearing a green shawl around their head panted as they pulled their weapon from the back of another Einherjar that lay on the floor. Their back was to the door. Flapping wings were heard and they gasped. Quickly, she stumbled back and reached for the door handle. Scared. The fox salivated. They always taste better when they're scared. We are not eating corpses. Spoilsport. They're coming in. What? Naruto threw himself away from the door as it flung open and quickly shut. The figure leaned on the other side and pressed their ear to the door. More flapping sounded before the figure sighed and made to open the door. Honed reflexes were the only reason Naruto's head lacked an axe protruding from it. His hand still bled as it tightened around the Arabic girl's axe. She was a young thing, definitely not much older than Annabeth, but the look in her eyes spoke of a maturity most didn't have. Lifeguard. She mumbled. She looked at the axe he still held and pulled it. He ignored the sting as he kept it in place. The girl frowned at him. I seek no conflict with you, lifeguard. Perhaps not, he uttered. But those Ainhariar may think otherwise. Those Ainhariar are driven by the beliefs they died with. The girl mumbled, almost sourly. She sighed. Please release my axe, I swear on my family name that I mean you no harm. I'm here to report, and then go home. That's all. Home. Naruto frowned as he released her axe's blade. The fox healed his wounds and she slid her weapon back over her shoulder before looking at him again. I'm like you. His brow furrowed for a moment before it clicked. She wasn't an Einherji. Looking her over, he noticed her armor resembled a more modernized version of Gunila's, and her shawl was actually a hijab considering how it tucked tightly around her face. You're alive. Yes. The girl nodded. Samria al-Abbas. You're an Arabic Valkyrie? He asked. She hesitated and he sighed before he crossed his arms. Listen, if it makes you feel better, my name is Naruto. Not, lifeguard. Oh. Samria blinked. That's unexpected. Naruto smirked when she nodded. I get that a lot. Want to tell me why those Ainhariar were gunning for you? It's because I'm the daughter of Loki. Really? Naruto felt his eyebrows shoot to his hairline. Really? She nodded. He leaned back and considered how much that had to suck. The girl leaned against the door. Can I ask you something now? Is it about me being in the closet? I don't care what your sexual preferences are. Quote. I'm going to pretend you didn't just say that. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose while the fox roared with laughter. What's your real question? How are you still alive? Magic. Quote. Really? Samria blinked. That's the gist of it. He shrugged. Don't you have a report to make? Yeah. I don't think Gunil is going to be happy with it though. Gunia gives you a hard time. I'm a daughter of Loki. She's a daughter of Thor. Samria shrugged. Marvel didn't just make that rivalry famous for the heck of it. No kidding. Naruto mumbled, recalling his uncle's rants against the gods in question whenever he tried to get him invested in cartoons by binge-watching them. At least, attempting to. They usually just put him to sleep. Except for one time where a Spider-Man cartoon featured the lizard. He was up for a whole night, afraid about being caught off guard by the nightmare-inducing madman known as Kurt Connors. Naruto shook the thought from his mind and sought desperately to distract himself from it. So, it's that bad that you two are pulled into it. Oh, no. She was hoping to use our similarity to make a foundation of friendship so that you would reveal your abilities. We've noticed how lenient you get in fights whenever you have to interact with younger girls. I don't. I'm not. Don't worry, I think it's an unconscious psychological thing, Samria shrugged. I told her I'd try, but that we probably wouldn't get anywhere, and I was right. You're maddeningly unhelpful. All praise to my uncle in that regard. Naruto deadpanned. Then she decided to just use me as a distraction to catch you off guard. Samria continued. I figure it fair to warn you that she's waiting with a good dozen Valkyrie to come in and attack us while we're talking. Quote. What? Loki and Thor. Samria shrugged. The hint of a smirk played at her features. Personally, I'm rooting for you. Gunil is a jerk. Ill intent inbound. Code red. Code red. Thanks. Mind. Naruto nodded to the side. Samria stepped to the side, allowing him to run out of the door and leave one of the weirdest exchanges of his life. Although, that could have been attributed to his sleep deprivation. March 12, 2008. Bodies of Ainhariar and Valkyrie alike littered the foyer. They were wholly unprepared for the carnage that came early that morning. Explosions riddled the dining hall, disrupting the morning meal, and runestones across the hotel fell inert as safety precautions activated. All save for the Master Stone, Odin's personal key, which had been stolen from his quarters. The culprit of these atrocities. A very unhappy employee. Why won't you die? Gunia huffed with every slash she made at the blonde lifeguard. Her target caught her stab through the palm of his hand and drove his foot into her gut. She stumbled back and glared at the boy facing her. His body was leaner and muscles more pronounced due to the slight malnourishment he suffered. His hair had grown to a shaggy length and peach fuzz grew on his jaw, chin and the sides of his mouth. His shirt was the only article of clothing that lacked any damage, despite the many attempts made on his life. The skin exposed by his torn jeans was littered with scars, a fate his arms and right eye shared. She'd acquired his original right eye in their ninth duel, and witnessed his incredible regenerative gift firsthand. That trophy was pickled in a jar and would rest on her desk until Ragnarok came. I told you. His voice was scratchy and dry. I tried that already. It was boring. The lifeguard cut his own words short to turn and catch Mallory Keene in the skull with his axe. He jumped up and over her head, his axe dislodged and caused the daughter of Frigg to stumble into Gunnela's way. The blood spray blinded the daughter of Thor, leaving her open to another assault that knocked her to the ground. Through bleary eyes she stared at the lean figure that stood over her. So I stood back up. He turned his back on her and limped toward the main doors. Another Einherjar flew at the lifeguard, only to be caught by a swinging log, one of many traps that was set up before the main attack and further dwindled their numbers, and crushed into a wall. The blonde lifeguard put his hand on the door and turned back to her. He pointed at her with his axe. In case it wasn't clear, he said through gritted teeth. I quit. You win. Game. Over. Company, Gunia scowled at him. Coward. I'm not immortal. He roared, rounding on her. I'm not Einherjar. This was just a job. I quit that job. You don't like it. Tough. That's how life works. You want something and it's ripped away from you, so you have to adapt. Deal with it. Fool. The game won't end, she huffed and pushed herself to her feet. Until you die. Really? He asked, scowling. She nodded. His eyes narrowed, he held his hands out to his sides. Then come and kill me, Thorsdottir. Gunia managed one step, before she found herself without a leg. She toppled ungracefully to the ground and glared at him as he caught his axe on its rebound. You belong here. Not with mortals. She pulled herself towards him and manifested her wings. Here. Silver knives flew and her wings were riddled with holes, rendered useless. Lifeguard. My name is Naruto. Learn it. Remember it. Hate it. He pressed his fingers into his chest as he bared his teeth like a rabid beast. Because I've done the one thing few others can claim. I beat you, Valkyrie. I beat all of you. With his boast delivered, Naruto huffed and slumped against the locked doors to regain his breath. Gunia watched him with a scowl. So long as the security was still active, he would be trapped. The Einherjar would recover soon enough, and even she would reform whole if given enough time. Then they could attack while he was weak and make him eat those words. A raven flew down from the upper floors and landed on the handle of the door Naruto leaned upon. Its eyes shone with power as it cawed. The latch clicked. No. Gunia balled her hands into fists. Lord Odin, why? Because he is correct. The wise voice of the Allfather rumbled. She looked up and saw the one-eyed man standing in a green polo and slacks. He looked down at her, and gave her a knowing look. He's still immortal. But, Lord Odin. Fret not, Captain. The Allfather smiled. His time will come and when it does, I will send you to collect him. Gunia was too flustered to manage a single word. Odin lost his smile as he walked over to the mortal and clapped a hand on his shoulder, a gesture that Gunia had seen him do many times before to the gods that he ruled over. They stared at one another, before Odin cracked another small smile. This one full of nothing pleasant like the one he bore for her. I will warn you once, boy, the Allfather said lowly as he put one hand on the door. If you tell your family any of Valhalla's secrets, not even Olympus' strongest magic will protect you from my wrath. Are we understood? Yes, sir. Good. Odin's smile became warm as he pushed the door open. Live strong, and die well, Naruto Hunterson. We will meet again one day. Thank you for your benevolence, Lord Odin. Naruto mumbled, stumbling out into the Boston air without looking back. Limitations. They exist for a reason, but what that reason is no one can truly say. Some believe they are to be surpassed, others suggest they are only meant to be reached. Everything has its limits. Moreover, everyone has a breaking point. March 12, 2008. The doors slammed shut upon his exit. Finally, the fox huffed. I'd almost forgotten how nice the sun was. Can I have a minute without talking? Naruto groaned as he sat down on the steps of the mansion. He buried his face into his hands. He'd been in Hotel Valhalla fighting to survive for so long that, honestly, he wasn't sure what year it was. His stomach growled and he wrapped his arms around it with a groan. It felt like barbed wire was being churned around inside his guts. Surviving off of my energies alone will not suffice. We need actual food to replenish what was lost, boy. The fox rumbled. I know. Naruto sighed. With a grimace he got back to his feet and started shambling towards the gate. Upon getting there, he leaned himself against the iron and pushed. A gentle groan before the rattle of chains made him glare at the first obstruction that had gotten in his way. He leaned himself against the gate and closed his eyes. In $%. His head hurt like it had been beaten daily for months, it was. His stomach hurt like he hadn't eaten in weeks, he hadn't. And he was so tired, physically, mentally, and emotionally. He felt like he could sleep where he stood for years if need be. Don't you dare. The fox warned. Just climb the fence again. You make it sound so easy. Naruto grumbled, backing away and looking at the top of the gate. He took a deep breath before he made the leap to the top, hands gripping the rusted metal. The brief time he spent dangling for a few seconds felt like hours to his sore arms. With a hint of struggle, the exhausted teen hoisted himself over the gate and landed with a stumble to his knees on the other side. Naruto pushed himself to sit with his back against the gate and let his head roll back. The cool springtime air blew across his face and he stared at the faint sunny hue above the cloud-filled sky with squinted eyes. Within minutes, his eyes fell shut and his breathing started to slow. Hey! Hey! The fox's bark stirred Naruto from his half-slumber. We still need food, boy. Shoo up, fox. I'm just gonna rest here, only need a second, he mumbled. That plan was shot down when a vintage car horn blared, disrupting his approaching blissful state of unconsciousness. He groaned and curled up onto his side, attempting to visually display how done he was dealing with people. He covered his ears and turned away when a screech of rarely used brakes echoed through the street. The only saving grace was the warmth that suddenly filled the area, soothed his aching body. Lil, nephew. Uncle Fred, go away. Naruto groaned. He just wanted to rest and forget about the past however many days he spent in Hotel Valhalla. The approaching footsteps almost made him whimper. I can't wait to hear what sort of insane reasoning you have for coming to Boston. You are in so much trouble. Oh, no. Uncle Fred's hand rested on his shoulder and he felt something cool press against his forehead. Weird, normally Uncle Fred was warmer. His eyes cracked open. Uncle Fred was warmer. No. No no no. No. Come on, kid. You're not allowed to be sick when I'm mad at you. This is so not fair. I'm not sick. Just tired. Naruto huffed, trying to blink some more accurate vision into his eyes. The figure touching him was faintly humanoid in shape, but he couldn't make out details. He tensed when he felt something wrap around his shoulders and under his legs. Uncle Fred knew better. He wouldn't touch him like that. That meant, they were coming for him again. No. No. He just got out. He quit. Odin let him go. Were the Norse seriously that petty? Apparently so. Well, he wouldn't get taken without a fight. Let me go. He protested, throwing his all into his escape. Hey, stop. Seriously, kiddo, I'm Zhu Wo. Watch the $%. Naruto didn't know what he hit, but he definitely broke it. Score 1 for the sleepy mortal. The damage must have been impressive, because the grip on his legs dropped. Damn it. I liked those shades. Naruto threw an arm over his captor's shoulder, hooked it around their neck, and swung his legs up to nail their head with a blind kick. He missed, but the following knee caught them in the larynx. In $. His captor wheezed, fully releasing the hold they had on the boy. Naruto dropped to his feet and scrambled away, bursting into a sprint with newfound energy. He chanced a glance over his shoulder and could only see a bright blurry blob running after him. The Valkyries. Had to be. Sore losers. All of 'em. I won't go back. Naruto panted as he ran. Escape was the only thing on his mind. He had to get away. He had to get away from Boston, from the East Coast. He had to go west. He just needed some help. Phew, Fox. I need your help. I can't help, boy. The fox growled. Your body is literally tearing itself apart just to replenish our reserves. We need to get out of here. Naruto stumbled through some bushes. I need to get out of here. If I help you, we could die. The fox warned. Just do it. Naruto shouted, pushing off a tree to avoid bowling over a pair of mortals on a stroll and ran through the next crosswalk. A horn blared halfway as he crossed and he turned to have his vision filled with the headlights of a Peterbilt. Then, all he saw was a bright red light. His whole body felt like it was on fire and his chest started to feel tight. The approaching semi-truck and the world around him slowed to a crawl. 10 seconds, boy. The fox rumbled. Go. Naruto moved. Come on, Lil, nephew, just stop running. You're hallucinating. Apollo called as he ran after Naruto. He grimaced when the teen kept muttering to himself. He should have recognized the signs of trauma when he parked his ride, but he was so caught up in relief that he found his nephew first. That he could get Diana off of his back and bring Artemis back out. Diana had made good on her word, almost ending his immortal life 6 times during the first month of his nephew's second disappearance. She had made her attempts on his immortal life more sporadic and unpredictable since the last failed attempt. Worst of all, his twin was unreachable telepathically, which meant for all intents and purposes, Apollo was on his own. For the past 3 months, the Roman had been awake, attending meetings in Artemis' stead and likeness, undetected by the council, or her presence was ignored. That was even more frightening to the sun god, for it implied the other Olympians knew what had happened, and were leaving him to the wolf. If that was the case, then she had been playing the long game, the shrewd bitch, with only Apollo's word being the one against her. Given the mistake he made, yet again, not many were going to take his accusation with any grain of salt. This is not going to make that any better, Apollo thought grimly as he raced across Boston's streets in pursuit of Naruto, losing sight of him for milliseconds whenever he abruptly juked through the magical city that his pantheon agreed, for the most part, to stay out of. He couldn't tap into his full power here, not unless he wanted to risk drawing out his irate Roman twin and her hunters. That was too dangerous right now, for both himself, Naruto and Naruto's psyche. His nephew's mortal mind had clearly been tortured by the Norse's barbaric afterlife and his still-living body showed the effects of the strain being in it left on him. As if being involved with that Egyptian wasn't bad enough. He grumbled, ducking around a happy elderly couple that were walking their Pomeranian. There was one positive, he would admit, his mortal nephew's speed had immensely increased. Not to godly levels, but they were definitely considered beyond current human capabilities, perhaps superhuman. It only became supernatural when Naruto suddenly exploded with a shroud of bubbling red energy and launched himself through the incoming Peterbilt, vanishing with a sonic boom. Apollo jogged to a stop as the boom rippled through the city, hardly winded from the brisk sprint that would have left Usain Bolt out of breath, and looked at the bisected Peterbilt that suffered from his nephew's spontaneous combustion. The grill, along with being busted inward, was melted and red hot. He looked down at the patch of smoldering asphalt where he last saw his nephew, the crosswalk and a good portion of the street now obscured by a small crater with smoke wafting off of it. Okay. Apollo pulled his phone out and flipped it open. Time to call Diana. No need. No matter what his lying Roman little sister might say, Apollo did not jump. He calmly turned around and found Diana standing there. Her eyes were locked in the direction Naruto had gone. I will retrieve my son. Your aid is no longer required. What? She had to be kidding. Diana, must I repeat myself? Diana glanced at him. She had her bow in her hand. Go tell father that I will be unavailable for the next few days. My chariot's schedule is set, and my hunters have their targets, so he should have nothing to be concerned with. Zeus won't. Apollo. The goddess looked at him with cool silver eyes. My son needs me. That right there was all Apollo needed to hear. All right. Just, here. He twisted his wrist and gave her an emergency medical bag that he pulled out of the air. She took it and tucked it away. He was in rough shape. Delirious, too. He broke my sunglasses. Keep better care of your things. Diana suggested coolly before disappearing from view. Apollo crossed his arms and looked back at the crater. Then at the mortals around him. He smirked and with a thought, was clad in a form-fitted black suit, his hair slicked back and his eyes covered by new black sunglasses. Everyone, relax. He stepped into the front of the crowd and manifested an identification badge and a golden neuralizer, both he held up. My name is Agent I, and I'm with the federal body inspectors. We're taking over this investigation, but first I just need everyone to look right here. He pocketed his fake ID and pointed at the neuralizer. Get nice and close now. Be sure to look right at the pretty light. When the red haze lifted, Naruto found himself far away from Boston. Actually, he didn't know where he was. Stars and galaxies danced around the wooden path he stumbled into. A thick mist-lined stone-paved ground that he didn't see until he had dropped to his hands and knees through it. His breaths came at a rapid pace and his heart pounded like a drum. Get up, boy. Get up. The fox snarled. We cannot stay here. Naruto tried to rise, but dropped back into the mist with a heavy grunt. For as much as he wanted to leave, as willing as his spirit was, his body just wouldn't listen. His exhaustion returned tenfold and his eyes began to drift shut. Well, well, well. The soft clap of steps along the stones was accompanied by a gentle hiss of a coo. What have we here? Blue eyes cracked open and stared at the being that spoke. Their skin paler than snow and their eyes that of a serpent's, a dark-haired humanoid. Their features were too androgynous to identify their sex, wearing a kimono and obi knelt in front of him. A grin spread across their face. My. You've certainly seen much better days, they said with a chuckle. Their pale hand, warmer than ice but not by much, reached out and cupped his face. The familiar gesture was lost on him, but there was a joy in their sinister-looking eyes. It's been so long, Naruto-kun. The world went dark before Naruto could press them for any questions. When Naruto awoke, he felt weak. It was almost as if he'd been captured by the Amazons again. Only this time his eyes didn't open under blinding fluorescent light, but soothing dances of fire. Particularly, the fire of a paper lantern which hung from a dark oak ceiling. He tried to rise, but the warmer-than-ice touch pushed onto his chest, keeping him flat. The serpent's eyes stared down at him again. Stay put. They reached out of his line of sight for something. A steaming cup was pulled into view and was offered to him. Here. Small sips. Naruto glared at it warily. They chuckled. Your suspicion, though expected, is heartbreaking, my friend. I don't, he rasped, swallowing dry air in an effort to wet his mouth. No you. Really? The serpent's eyes blinked as they pulled the drink back, but the small smile remained in place. Naruto gave a brief, curt nod that made the pounding in his head return. Ah. They set the cup down on a tray near the side of the mat he lay on, and their hands rested on their lap. Then allow me to reintroduce myself to you. My name is Yamatano Orochimaru. A phantom chill washed down Naruto's spine. Yes, there it is. The serpent, Orochimaru, let out a bitter chuckle. The familiarity. The fear. I'm not afraid of you. Naruto spat, scowling at the humanoid. Is that so? Orochimaru tilted their head. Naruto nodded. A massive white dracon head replaced their body. Around it were 7 smaller heads, all were shaped like various reptiles, real and not. Naruto's heart raced and his breathing increased. His body trembled against his will. The dragon's golden eye peered at him and its tongue flicked out as it hissed. And now, change back. Please, change back. Please, oh please, change back. He didn't voice the request, but it was made all the same. He felt his eyes burn as his mental capabilities regressed, subjugated to the primal fear he felt. He wanted to get away from it, he wanted to kill it, but it had him trapped, he couldn't breath so much as move. He wanted his uncle, moreover, he wanted his mom. He wanted to be away from it. I figured as such. The 8-headed dragon chuckled and mercifully its form melted away to once more appear humanoid. They grabbed a pad of paper and a stick of sharpened charcoal that rested beside the steaming cup. That was quite the extreme reaction from you, Naruto-kun. Is it a phobia? I'll take your silence as a yes. The charcoal danced on the page. Subject sufferers from extreme herpetophobia. Advise against shifting or using summoning ninjutsu unless absolutely necessary. What? Naruto croaked out. What do you want? Want? Orochimaru looked up from their notepad. They smiled at him again. Silly boy, I want to help you. Liar. Oh, Naruto-kun. Orochimaru put a hand to their chest. That cuts deep. As one shinobi of the leaf to another, I genuinely wish to aid you. The fox roared in animalistic fury and Naruto's pounding headache increased tenfold. His brow furrowed around his wince. What the heck was a shinobi? Orochimaru's eyes widened as their silence stretched on to an uncomfortable length and their smile faltered. They leaned in, close to his face, and looked at him again. Then, after they pulled away, they grabbed the hem of his shirt and lifted it to look at his stomach. Their other hands started to poke and prod at his stomach. Alarms blared in his head from the action. His uncle's warnings on stranger danger rushed to the forefront of his mind. Thankfully, the invasive investigation ended just as abruptly as it started. My word. Orochimaru breathed as they sat back. You're from much earlier than I anticipated. They leaned forward. Tell me, Naruto-kun, how is Kushina Haim? Quote. Who? She's dead. The fox snorted. Good riddance. Interesting. The dragon human scribbled something down before Orochimaru retrieved the now cooled cup and their hand ignited with blue energy. The cup steamed and the blue light faded from view. Sip. It will help you recover. Still on edge, Naruto carefully sipped from the cup. Warm green tea flowed into his mouth and he felt his aches dwindle. Instinctively, he rushed to drink more, but it was pulled back. Ah. Drinking too fast prevents the saliva in your mouth from combating the dangerous acids in your stomach. Orochimaru chided. Naruto scowled. He didn't want a lesson on proper nutrition, he wanted to drink the tea. Orochimaru smiled back at him. If you behave, I will answer all of your questions. Reluctantly, Naruto listened. 5 minutes later, he finished the cup of tea. Orochimaru helped him sit up against the wall before they recovered their notepad and charcoal pen. Where am I? My home. Orochimaru chuckled when he glared at them. I'm sorry, the opportunity was too good to pass up. They made several gestures with their hands, the blue light returning before a plume of smoke filled the space between them. It was filled with the image of a vast colorless rainbow of stars and galaxies. Naruto stared, dumbfounded, at the impossible sight before him. You are currently in the space between spaces, the beginning and the end of time itself. A place where man will never breathe, but life will always thrive. Where one need not speak in order to say something, and where the deaf can hear everything. Orochimaru smirked. I call it the paradox. That's pretty on the nose. Naruto frowned as the projected image and the smoke it resided in dissipated. Yes, I thought so at first. They shrugged. It was a placeholder, but it's grown on me. How did I get here? You utilized the chakra of the Kyuubi no Kitsune while suffering chakra exhaustion and having underdeveloped chakra coils. They stroked their chin thoughtfully. A feat I thought impossible, but here we are. Okay, so what's chakra? Isn't that the question? Orochimaru smiled as they held their hand up and made the blue energy flow around it again. Chakra is considered to be the essence of mortal life. Scientifically speaking, it is the energy composed of and created by the spiritual, mental and physical capabilities of the user. It flows through all of life, or at least, it did once. What do you mean? Naruto frowned. Orochimaru grinned, eyes gleaming with pride at the question. So inquisitive. How refreshing. It almost makes me melancholy, they said. They leaned forward and pointed at him. You, Naruto, are an anomaly in the world. One of millions. Like me, you have the potential to rule over life and death. The power to command the elements and reshape reality itself resides within you. Augmented and empowered by the bane of our village, a beast composed entirely of chakra, the Kyuubi no Kitsune, Kurama. I will slaughter and skin this useless reptile. It has no right to use my name. The fox spat. Naruto glanced at Skull's exposed head as its eye looked at him and narrowed. A snarl echoed in his head. And before you get any ideas, neither do you, boy. My word, that's him, isn't it? He's speaking to you and emoting through that image. Orochimaru was staring at his tattoo. Without asking, they grabbed his arm and pushed the sleeve of his shirt up. These markings. Nordic, I believe. And even the image itself consists of minuscule characters. Chakra-imbued magic. Or, could it be magic-imbued chakra? Fascinating. Let go of me. Naruto growled. Orochimaru looked at him, the cool serpentine gaze sending shivers up Naruto's spine, before they chuckled and released him. My apologies, old friend. So much has changed. We're not friends. I don't even know who you are. Blue eyes narrowed, recalling the unsettling form revealed to him. Why do you keep calling me one? Not now, no, but in my time we were allied. Orochimaru sighed, tapping their charcoal on their notepad. They scribbled for a second before setting the pad down. As for how that is, you must understand, Naruto-kun, I am not limited to the same linear perception of time as you are. Long before you were even a thought in your parents' minds, I had started my experiments. Quote. Oh, gods. His eyes widened. You're not a dragon. You're a scientist. Yes. Orochimaru said, sounding way too happy with his horrified realization. That was far worse, in Naruto's opinion. Magic sucked, but it had rules. Science, mortal science especially, broke those rules for the greater good. A familiar tug of fear gripped his heart and he looked at the cup that was set aside warily. I did nothing to you, Naruto-kun. Orochimaru put a hand on their chest. You have my word. Forgive me if I don't believe you. With ease and understanding, Orochimaru smiled. For you've forgiven me for much worse. Stop talking about me like you know me. Naruto shot to his feet in outrage, before slumping back as his head spun. Orochimaru rose and guided him back to a seated position. He glared at them. We are not friends. Then we must be enemies. Quite the fatalistic mindset, boy. Orochimaru tisked and went to a small fire pit nearby. The pot hanging above it bubbled and was stirred. Their eyes glanced back at him, their smile cold and unfeeling like the creature it was beneath their human guise. If you want to fight me, to slay the great Yamada no Orochi, then you are welcome to try. You would fail at best, and at worst trap yourself in the paradox. You're a monster. Naruto narrowed his eyes further with the accusation. You threw away your humanity out of vanity. You know not of what you speak. I gave up my mortality out of fear. Orochimaru hissed back, glaring daggers at him. The fire's light illuminated their true form in their shadow. They turned back to their stirring with a sigh. If I must suffer you being so petulant and stupid, yet again, then I am indeed damned. I would rather we speak as friendly associates, if not cordial individuals. Is that too much to ask, Naruto-kun? I guess not. Naruto muttered, bringing his knees up and resting his arms atop them. He watched the scientist warily. A pressing curiosity made itself known. How did you know me? Orochimaru stopped stirring. He hung his head and spoke lowly. You were a cursed boy, born on the night of the Kyuubi's disastrous rampage, and both of your parents died to save you from its wrath. Kill it. The fox growled. I'm going to kill it. Quiet. He grunted lowly, listening transfixed as Orochimaru continued, undisturbed. You were the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. An orphan with the brain cells of a gnat, made to be the weapon to end all weapons in our era of war. At one point, I was your enemy. Orochimaru looked at him, features cold as stone. When you were 12 I attacked you numerous times. I poisoned your best friend, and killed the man you considered a grandfather, the man I considered my father, who'd betrayed me and chose your father to lead the village once he stepped down. Naruto stared at him, frowning. None of this registered for him on any level. He'd only ever known the Hunt and Uncle Fred as his family. If the scientist was trying to goad him into reacting, it wasn't going to happen. Then, Kagaya came. They sighed. Our greatest enemy was not of our world, but the cause of it. She was the progenitor of Chakra, a being from another world. I'm sorry, hang on. Naruto closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. Are you suggesting that we're descended from aliens? Seriously. It's that, or she was a god. Orochimaru scoffed at the notion. You believe in magic, but not gods. Naruto arched his brow. The arts of arcana are just something that I've yet to deconstruct on a mortal level. It's a work in progress. They shrugged. But gods. Fae, they are just advanced lifeforms with understanding of science that surpass our own. That's not true. And how would you know, child? Orochimaru asked, a placating smile on their face. I was raised by Artemis and Apollo. I'm sorry, what? The bewildered look that crossed Orochimaru's face was one Naruto etched into his memory. Serve the smug snake right. My mother, Artemis, found my birth mother dying in a field. Naruto frowned. She and 2 hunters helped bring me into the world. My mother was riddled with cuts and held on long enough to give me my name. Afterward, I was raised by the huntress and her handmaidens. Her twin, Apollo, the god of the sun, often took me for lessons on culture around the world. When I was freshly turned 12, I was told to leave with my uncle. He set me up in Pennsylvania, where I remained for 2 years. Please, continue. Orochimaru implored, a hungry look on their face, before they shook their head. No, wait. First, a meal. You must be starving. As if on cue, Naruto's stomach rumbled. He begrudgingly accepted the bowl that was given to him, and examined the contents. Boiled water and vegetables. Yum. I'd be more concerned with the meal if there was meat in it. The fox grumbled. Naruto shivered at the thought and started to eat. When he finished, he set the bowl down and watched Orochimaru as he ate. Not that I'm not grateful for your help, but, I need to know. After I tell you this story, will you help me get home? Of course. Orochimaru smiled crookedly. It would be disastrous if you stayed or remembered this anyway. Naruto's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? Oh, well, there can only be one inhabitant of the paradox. For if it isn't witnessed, how can it exist? They tilted their head. And yet, if there were 2 witnesses, they would confirm its existence, thus making it impossible to not exist. Henceforth, the only way to keep it around is with one dedicated mad being within it, in essence, me. Right. So. Orochimaru smiled and clapped their hands together. You were telling me about Pennsylvania. March 15, 2008. Diana hadn't expected this hunt to last for as long as it did, and if she'd known it'd last 3 days, she would have shot Apollo with another arrow. The brief glimpse of her son in Boston had been both a blessing and a curse. That he still lived, that he survived, the tortures of Valhalla made her pride and joy as a mother swell. Artemis may have spent most of their time with him, but Diana had taught him the skills needed to survive the most extreme conditions he could find himself in. For instance, her lesser persona had not been pleased to come around with their 7-year-old son digging a hole on his own in the midst of a Nebraska blizzard. It was insulting to Diana's pride that Artemis had thought she'd let anything as simple as hypothermia harm their son. That argument cost her. It was years before Diana saw him with her own eyes again, the day before he was to be sent away. Pride in her child's survival aside, the evidence of his time spent there was painfully obvious, even before Apollo's ill-fated chase began. His features had been gaunt and his breathing was heavy, almost labored, as if he'd been on the brink of death. She assumed that given he was fighting for survival in what was considered a warrior's ideal afterlife, the second fact hadn't been too surprising. Now, he'd slipped away again. Diana's eyes narrowed in annoyance as she scoured the lands beneath her chariot. If that Egyptian cur had interfered with her son once more, she would take the matter to Jupiter and end this farce of an issue. Unlike Zeus, he had the sense to recognize the potential benefits her mortal child had and would act to defend their claim on him. The Roman king of Olympus would likely even push to have the boy enlisted at Camp Jupiter. If that happened, perhaps her hunt could finally have some legitimate representation in the Senate. Stupid sexist old fools who cling to the past. Diana scowled. While she would rather have him at her side to hunt, forever out of the reach of Venus's twisted schemes, she knew Jupiter would not budge on that regard. He may have more sense than Zeus when it came to her son, but he was still a stickler about rules. A glimmer of red light caught Diana's sharp eye as she approached the Rocky Mountains. She peered over her chariot's edge, catching a glimpse of faint white darting into the dark wood. She looked at her golden deer and rose to her full height. Continue your flight. Return to Olympus once you finish. With her instructions given, Diana leapt from her chariot and descended to the vast wooded lands near Colorado Springs. The Garden of the Gods, a favorite location of her hunters to rest at and near her own private lands. Her senses alerted her to the feeling of eyes upon her and she scanned the area. Animals, mostly, with a sparse few nymphs poking their heads out to determine who she was. Confident that there was no threat, she strode toward the space where she saw the red light. Ambient energies of an unknown origin lingered over the glassed dirt, and smaller glass spaces moved away from the large crater. Almost like tracks. Diana realized. Her wayward son had left a trail with his oddly formed footsteps. She tried not to rush after them, willing herself to hold back from breaking into a sprint. If she chased him like a wolf did the golden hind, it would only make him flee. So, patiently, the huntress continued her pursuit through the woods. Several meters from the glass crater, the glass tracks ceased. Diana resorted to more practiced tracking tactics, eyes flicking to each cracked stick, disturbed bush and flora. Finally, after what felt like forever, she found him. Naruto was slumped against a tree, his clothing in tatters, apparently asleep. Diana observed him for a moment, before cautiously making her approach. He looked older with the growth of peach-colored facial hair that spread across his jawline and framed the sides of his mouth. Faint dark circles surrounded his eyes and his parted lips showed a hint of sharper canines. A glimmer drew her eyes to his left ear. There was a piercing in the lobe, below the odd cuff that was his axe's disguised form, a simple black stud. Radiating from it was the same ambient energy that surrounded the glass crater he'd apparently left in his wake. She scowled at his new accessory, disliking the radiant energy on principle. Its presence raised too many questions and, knowing that there was only one way to receive answers, she decided to rouse him. A swift kick to the sole of his foot did the trick. He shot to his feet, a silver throwing knife drawn in his right hand and prepared to attack, only to stop when he saw it was her. Mom. Naruto. Diana frowned as she considered her next words. She had barely blinked and he had moved, his arms suddenly around her and his face buried in her shoulder. I'm sorry. The raspy whisper was accompanied by a sharp intake of breath. I'm so sorry. A shudder racked his form and Diana immediately understood. Though he was her son, raised and trained by herself, her lesser persona and their oafish twin brother, Naruto was still but a mortal boy. The trials he'd gone through, the things he must have seen because of those inferior gods, were an assault on his peace of mind. He lacked the demigods, instincts that would grant them reprieve of any brushes with death from the supernatural or ignore any unexplained phenomena. Unbidden, her arms rose up and wrapped around him. She gently rubbed his back as he uttered hushed apologies through his sobs. Reluctantly, she decided that the chastising could wait. Her son needed her. Hush now, Naruto, Diana cooed in an effort to cease his sobs. She felt him relax from her ministration and granted him a gentle peck on the side of his head, before hugging him again. Her next words resonated with her Greek persona's intent. It was only after they slipped out did she realize that she'd lost control, and that Artemis had wrested her way back. It's okay, my fearless hunter. I'm here now. Mom is here. Perseverance. A trait humans have had since the end of the Golden Age. Often it was associated with heroes, both of grand names and of small renown. This trait, and the acknowledgement of it, is one of a few that kept man atop the food chain as the apex predator. When life challenged them, they pressed onward. With perseverance, even the most mundane of mortals were capable of becoming legends. March 17, 2008. The hallways of Eleanor Roosevelt High were bustling and bumping with green decor all around. During the break between classes, many students were talking about plans for the festive evening. Parties where underage consumption would be the norm were particularly waived. Those seeking to climb the social hierarchy set about gathering others to join them in these mischievous acts. One such boy with this desire was Jeremy Higginsworth. He was a decent-looking boy, straight teeth, gray eyes, and shaggy dark hair that was all the rage, fit from his time as off-guard for ERH's basketball team, but lacked the social clout most of his fellow teammates had. Reason being, he was dumped by his girlfriend Jessica when caught making out with another girl at Dylan Matthews' party last month. That the other girl happened to be her younger sister might have played a part in his ruined reputation. Regardless, he had a plan. He'd bring the new girl with him to Michael Howard's party, make Jessica jealous, have them start a feud and slip out from under the scope of the whole social lens as the innocent bystander. His target was switching her books out of her locker, about to head to her physics class. With a knowing look to his best bud Brandon Poompafus, he walked over and leaned on the lockers beside her. Hey, Thalls, got any plans tonight? Her locker slammed shut, she turned to face him, and Jeremy put on his winning smile. All according to plan. Talia Grace would be lying if she said that she didn't have any regrets. Not spending another day or more looking for Jason after that woman did the unspeakable thing topped the list, obviously, but there were more. She regretted kicking Luke off of the cliff, causing his demise and permanently putting an end to their friendship. She regretted electrocuting her cousin after that game of capture the flag even though he kind of asked for it. And, honestly, she regretted making Whiskers renegotiate his arrangement with an Egyptian god. Partially because it indirectly resulted in his banishment from Olympus and Camp Half-Blood, and partially because it meant a certain goddess who shan't be named kept sporadically pestering her with her unwanted opinions and presence. Mostly, though, Talia regretted the deal because she wasn't warned by anyone how badly junior year of high school sucked. At first, she thought it was a good deal. Rather than 3 years she'd have to suffer in the boring reality that was the education system of America, she was only one academic year away from being free of her responsibilities, from just telling the world to screw off while she focused on more important things. Seemed like a win, but then the annoyances started piling up on her. There was a whole year's worth of material she was behind on. How she got into Calc 2 she had no idea, but her grades were slipping and fast. If she flunked her classes because of her sudden age leap, she was going to hunt Whiskers' sandy friend down and kick his ass. She would have done so in the first place, were it not for the fact that Talia was 95% certain that Aphrodite caused this mess to happen herself, if only to get her enrolled in a public co-ed school. Why was she so sure? Well, on top of her struggling academic performance, boys began pestering her. The first guy to ask her out was kind of cute, shy, sweet, and maybe would have had a chance for a second date if he hadn't started falsely boasting to his friends how they got nasty in the bathroom stalls, literally the next day at lunch. After she'd accidentally dumped her lunch tray over the back of the ladies' man's head, she decided to focus on her studies. It was just 1 year, surely she could manage it. Then Saint Valentine decided to have a holiday, the inconsiderate jerk. Fed up with the constant attention and callous words from others who weren't interested in dating her, Talia called off the day before the dance, and spent the night off in the penthouse apartment that had been acquired for her by some guy named George Papadopoulos. She was positive it was another god's terrible alias, but for the life of her wasn't sure which. Now, after 3 weeks of reprieve from annoyances, another waited until the day of a holiday to make his attempt. And it was a Monday, so she couldn't skip. Well, she could, but she really needed to ask Mr. Birch questions about her physics homework. Stupid academic requirements, why couldn't Chiron just push for higher monster kills? Go away, Jeremy. Ah, but come on, Thalls. Electric blue eyes glared at the boy. Don't call me, Thalls. Jeremy was brain damaged. That had to be the only reason he was still standing there with a stupid grin on his face. But I can call you. Oh, my. Cute and has a good turnaround. You should consider giving him a chance. Aphrodite advised. Talia closed her eyes and took a deep breath. I'm about to call you an ambulance. Leave me alone, she said one last time before turning to leave. This guy wasn't worth the effort. He grabbed her arm and she almost socked him. Hear me out, Grace. Oh, and he was doing so well. Aphrodite sighed. Talia turned and drove her fist into his face. Jeremy's head whipped back and he dropped. The halls went quiet. She felt heat creep up the back of her neck when all eyes fell on her. Why were they staring? Was it because she knocked him flat? What did they expect her to do? Just take it. He was harassing her. Why were they looking at her like that? What are you looking at? Talia snapped. The students who wanted no part of it, turned and left. Whispers filled the briefly silent halls as she walked away with her head down, trying not to meet any of their eyes. Gods, public high school sucked. March 18, 2008. Deep in the forested lands outside of Colorado Springs, Ivan Moody's vocals rang out of a dark blue Jeep Wrangler traversing the backroad that cut through the wood. When it came to a stop, the music cut out with the engine and the quiet of the land reclaimed its domain. A whiskered blonde teen wearing jeans and a dark coat with a gray hoodie got out of the Jeep with a sigh. He turned around to gather the brown bags out of the back, before making his way up a dirt path toward a concealed wooden lodge. As he walked, he took in the surrounding wood and felt a warm peace about him. Colorado was, arguably, one of the most beautiful states Naruto had ever been in. Some of his favorite childhood memories took place here. The naming of his mother's wolf packs when he was 4 was one such memory. He'd been presented to the then alpha couple, reminded of the pups, and his own safety, before being loosed upon the half-dozen pups that were as eager to play as he was. It became a yearly tradition for him to name the new arrivals to the pack with his mother and sisters, until his departure from the hunt came about. Thankfully, despite his time away, he found this treasured memory was not retained by just himself. Barking greeted him once he passed a pair of cypress trees, and a large gray wolf trotted up to him. It broke into a full sprint, nearly bowling him over. Get down. Hey, I said, get down, Aquila. Despite himself, Naruto chuckled as he gently nudged the happy older she-wolf out of his way once he got close enough to the lodge. She barked and whined, bouncing and bumping around him while the rest of her pack cautiously watched. He cracked a half grin at her and shifted one of the grocery bags in his hand to the other, stopping where he stood to dig around in one. I know what you want, Aquila. Hush, shish. Hold on. After another moment he pulled out her prize, and she backed away, eyeing the ivory treat he held eagerly. Her gaze flicked between his eyes and the goods, settling on the latter. She licked her chops. Yeah, this is for you. See, mere girl, Naruto offered the large rawhide to her. She latched onto it and tugged, but he held firm. Nah, what's the rule? On 3. 1, 2. Aquila whined and jerked her head. It nearly toppled the teen, but he adjusted his footing in time to keep from falling. Hey. Naruto gave the wolf a firm stare. She growled and he narrowed his eyes. No. On 3. 1, 2. Aquila whined again, but this time didn't jerk her head. Golden wild eyes stared into his firm blue. 3. He let go and she shot off, snarling and whipping her head around while her pack mates rushed after her and her prize. Naruto chuckled, readjusting his bags as he strolled into the lodge. Crazy girl. 7 years old, still acting like a pup. Stupid mud almost made us lose our food. The fox grumbled. The blonde snorted, dropping one bag onto the island table that protruded from the wall. It toppled and spilled out several instant ramen cups that fell to the ground. Gods, Naruto grumbled, annoyed, before reaching down to pick them up. He set them back on the counter, before unloading the rest of the brown paper bag of its similar contents. He folded the bag up and set it aside before unloading the other, this one filled with more rawhides, bones, packages of beef jerky, a few apples, bananas, and a handful of vegetables. While the perishables were put in the freezer, the clack of claws on wood made Naruto look behind him. A wolf with deep black fur and striking blue eyes stared at him from the front hall. Bruno, hey, Naruto held his hand out. The beta eyed it before walking forward and pushing his head into it. Naruto gently scratched his head and ear. What's up, bud? Aquila fight the others off already. Bruno's dark nose sniffed at his face and pushed up to hook his arm over the wolf's neck. Naruto turned away with a laugh when it started licking at his face. Okay. Yes, you're a good boy. He gently pushed the large wolf back, shut the fridge and got to his feet, going to the table and pushing the ramen aside. He pulled another rawhide to the center of the table and looked at the wolf. He patted the wood surface. All right, Bruno. Come get it. Bruno cocked his head, nostrils flaring, and growled. Naruto gave him a lamented sigh. Come on, bud. Get the treat. He patted the wood again. Bruno's ears twitched at the key word, and a growl stretched out before he barked. Don't give me that attitude, Bruno. You know the deal. Bruno growled again and sneezed before staring at him with his piercing eyes. He's not going to get it. He's too dumb. Naruto sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. Look, Fox, I know you've got an issue with this arrangement, but this is important to me, okay? Please, just butt out. Fine. He's still dumb, though. Naruto sighed and drummed his fingers on the table while looking at Bruno, who was basically glaring at him. Give me the treat, human, his eyes said. Unfortunately, that's not how this could go. Come on, Bruno. It's right here on the table, whoa. Naruto jerked back as Bruno suddenly stood on his hind legs, his forelimbs braced on the table. His muzzle lashed out and snatched the rawhide before he scampered out of the lodge triumphantly. He huffed and tapped his finger on the table before running his hand over his face. Well, he got it. Now I just need to figure out what word he reacted to. Saving that puzzle for later, Naruto tucked the rest of the treats into a locked cupboard and then went to the sitting room, stepping around a few other canine lodge inhabitants to get to the couch. He grabbed the sound system remote that his uncle had installed and clicked it on, making sure the volume remained low. Metallica's Black Album became a manageable chaos to break the quiet as he grabbed his GED study guide and a notebook from their place on the coffee table. The pencil acting as a bookmark helped him get back to the section he was working on. Social studies. His least favorite subject. Don't knock historical knowledge, brat. The fox huffed. It could save your life. Naruto rolled his eyes and then groaned as he reread the line the fox had distracted him from. If it were up to him, he wouldn't even be bothering with this, but he was trying to live a normal life at his mother's request. He'd only agreed because even he saw how the last few years had been taking their toll on his mental state, evidenced by how he broke down after escaping Valhalla. Alas, mortal society wanted him to have at least some proof of a basic education before he could get involved with conservation organizations, so he was determined to acquire it. Just as Enter Sandman came to a close, Naruto finally finished the portion he was on. A depression of the cushion at his left told him he'd been accompanied on the couch, and before he could protest, the alpha gray wolf nosed herself under his arm and her head plopped on his notebook. Big golden eyes stared up at him imploringly and a whine pierced the air. Aquila. Naruto sighed. He scratched at her neck, causing the alpha to roll on her side and look up at him. Dutifully, his scratching moved down to her ribcage and he smiled at her happy woo. He laughed outright when she playfully nipped at his chin. Yeah, I guess you're right. Studying for my GED is overrated. You wanna go for a hike? Huh? Aquila darted off the couch and disturbed her slumbering pregnant pack mates, turning back to bark at him when she realized he'd yet to move. I'm coming. Geez. Naruto chuckled, gathering his study guide back up and setting it back on the table. May 30, 2008. Summer school. They want me to go to summer school. Talia grumbled. She was sitting in the stands of the arena, watching the returning half-bloods cut their teeth on the newcomers in the pit below her, and overseeing the new teaching skills of the swordmaster Chiron had hired. It was cathartic in a way that it really shouldn't have been. I mean, looking at your grades, I'm not surprised. Annabeth Chase said from her seat beside her. In her hands was Talia's final report card and a letter of concern addressed to the parent guardian. She winced as she read through it. Yikes, Talia. 3 C's, a B and an F. What happened? I dunno, I had a lot on my mind, I guess. Last winter really messed with me. Gods. One more year. Talia groaned, rubbing her face. It was just supposed to be one more year. It would have been one if you didn't break 5 guys' noses on school property, Annabeth said, sounding surprised by the amount. Talia grunted in dismissal and flatly glowered at her friend. She gave Talia a look of disapproval in return. Well, you could have just gone back to school with me. Annie. Please, stop calling me that. Annie. Talia reiterated with a smirk, making the younger girl groan. She dropped her smirk and glared down at the arena. 2 things. 1. I would have gone back, but a certain someone from Olympus enrolled me in Eleanor Roosevelt High. So, you know how that goes. Point taken. Annabeth nodded sympathetically. And the second. Those jerks had it coming. Talia threw her arms up. They just kept bothering me and wouldn't take no for an answer. Including the guy that was holding the sandbag for you. How did you know? Oh, no, don't tell me they got a video of that. It went viral. Annabeth gave her an apologetic shrug. Ah, that one was the only accident. Talia groaned and slumped back in her seat. She rubbed her face. No wonder I was suspended that week. I still can't believe I have to retake a whole year. Honestly, I think that it's a miracle you weren't expelled. Gee, thanks, Annie. Talia glowered at her friend for a good minute before hanging her head. Should have just let the gods atomize me. Don't be so dramatic. Annabeth rolled her eyes. She straightened the papers up and held them out. You gave public school a shot, just get re-enrolled with me. We'll be in the same grade and I'll get you back up to speed. Great in theory, except for the fact that Aphrodite is out to get me. Talia scowled as she snatched her papers back. Seeing the F on her physics grade made her blood boil. Her eyes flashed and lightning danced up her arm, igniting the papers in her hand. She let out a satisfied huff. Feel better? Not really. Talia slumped over to lean on Annabeth. Another year, Annie. How am I going to survive another year of school? You could always try to get a GED, the blonde said. She tilted her head. But that might make college harder to get into. A what? Talia sat up, looking at her pointedly. A GED. The certificate you receive for the General Education Development Test. Annabeth explained. Talia, how have you not heard about a GED? Are you telling me there's an option where I don't have to go to school? Yes, but Talia, no. Talia, yes. Look, a GED might get you into college, but college smallage. I can be done with school. Talia grinned. She threw her arm over Annabeth's shoulder. You're the best, Annie. How can I repay you? Going back to school. And you're funny. Boy, Percy's got no idea what he's in for, does he? I don't know what you're talking about. Uh-huh. Sure. When's the last time you two talked? Last winter. Spring break. A couple of days ago. Wait, that's not the point here. I disagree. Talia grinned. She'd successfully changed the subject and could now weed her best friend's plans for her kelp-headed cousin out of her. Life was always better at camp. If only it didn't feel like something was missing. June 27, 2008. Jeremy Higginsworth was not having a great start to his summer. His junior year had ended on a low note long after Grace had broken his nose, but then he'd heard her year hadn't ended well either. He'd eventually found another girl, Erica, to ask out and they'd gotten on pretty well. They went to a few parties together and had great makeout sessions early in June. Unfortunately, before he could seal the deal with her, his parents decided to take him out of New York for the summer, away from his friends and basketball, to stupid Nowheresville, Colorado, where there was nothing but trees, hicks, snow and bugs. His father, Lawrence, was going to meet with some other board members of Dare Enterprises. His mother went off in search of a decent bar or club. Both had left him at the Bear Creek Visitors Lodge to enjoy the wilderness while it was here. Without waiting for an escort, and confident his top-of-the-line iPhone's GPS would get him back to civilization, he went exploring. 40 minutes into his hike up a well-worn path, Jeremy found himself staring down a wolf with piercing blue eyes as it walked onto the trail. It hadn't noticed him at first and had stopped in the middle of the path to howl. He recorded it on video with his phone, already thinking of ways to impress Erica and his friends with the footage. Maybe even get some followers on MySpace. It was when the howl got a series of responses that he started to get wigged out by the eerie sound. Jeremy started to back away, flipping the camera on himself as he did. He was going to say something clever when a sharp crack rang out. A stick broke under his feet and the wolf looked at him. He stared back. It started coming towards him, and his heart leapt into his throat when he heard its growl. Jeremy immediately turned tail and ran, shamelessly screaming for his life. The wolf pursued him, barking and snarling. For some reason, he decided that running on a clear path that someone had been using was a dumb idea, and juked further into the wood. I could lose it in the trees. Jeremy thought. He made a left, then a right, then another left and a second right. He slowed to catch his breath and nearly messed up his pants when the wolf shot past him. It turned and doubled back, fangs exposed in a snarl. Jeremy Higginsworth thought that this was the day he was going to die in the woods. He scrambled away, slipping on the dirt and sticks, before rushing back towards where he thought the path was. A loud crack sounded before something snagged his ankle. It got him. Oh, God. It got him. Naturally, he started flailing. Then he started screaming. Maybe he'd started sobbing. Regardless of what step he was on, when Jeremy realized he wasn't dead yet or having the flesh ripped from his bones, opened his eyes and found himself dangling upside down from a snare. The wolf ran up to the tree, braced itself on its hind legs and snapped its jaws at his face. He was a foot above its snout. The wolf appeared to realize this and dropped down. It barked and then howled. More howls answered, and they sounded close. Jeremy panicked. Help! Please! He cried out. Someone help! Jeremy wasn't sure how long he screamed, but eventually someone heard him. To his dismay, it was a guy around his age. His right eye had a scar that cut through his eyebrow, and to the right of that was a silver stud pierced through his brow. A black stud was in his left earlobe and on the cartilage was a silver cuff. His cheeks had weird scars on them. He was wearing gray Columbia pants and had a white t-shirt with a crescent moon on it. Resting on his head were a pair of orange headphones and hanging off of one shoulder was a black backpack. Hey! Jeremy waved at him. Hey! Help! I say we let him fall. The fox advised. You'd have to be an idiot to miss that poacher's snare. Naruto stared up at the teenager dangling from a snare trap and shouting at him. Here he was sure that he'd disarmed all the poachers, snares in the area. At least this guy had found one more for him. He pulled his headphones off, allowing Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train to alert the wolf of his presence. Hey, you got a gun or something, right? Kill that thing. It's a monster. Starting to agree with you, Fox. Naruto mumbled to himself. The fox huffed. That's because I'm always right. Now you sound like my mother. Naruto rolled his eyes and looked at the growling Bruno. He held a hand out and clicked his tongue. Bruno's ear flicked, but he kept growling. Bruno. Naruto narrowed his eyes, and the beta stopped growling. He clicked his tongue again, and Bruno slowly made his way over. Bruno took in his scent before he started licking Naruto's hand. The blonde smiled and scratched his head. That's a good boy. Go on back to the pack. I'll take care of this guy, yeah. Bruno panted and licked his arm. Naruto sighed. Yes, okay, good boy. Here. He dug around in one of his pants pockets, pulling out some packaged jerky and ripping it in half. The wolf snatched it eagerly. Bruno, satisfied with his treat, slunk away back toward their lodge. Naruto stuck the rest of the jerky in his mouth and shooed the beta along when he looked back. No, Bruno. Go on, get. He got. Holy dollar and asterisk %, dude. How'd you do that? Naruto glanced up at the dangling teen and arched his pierced brow. He finished off his jerky with a gulp. How are you not unconscious yet? Wah-huh. Your lungs aren't meant to be under all the weight of your other organs. Naruto crossed his arms. The boy's eyes widened in fear. Oh, we could have some fun with this. The fox chuckled. You're right. He mumbled, cracking a small smirk. To add a log on the fire, he scratched his head. And if that doesn't get you, the blood rushing to your head will. Your heart's working overtime to compensate for the gravity. Stay up there too long and boom. But that's if you don't die of asphyxiation first. Oh, man, hey, get me down. Why? You're trespassing on private property. This is a national park, isn't it? The border is thin, but this is technically my family's land. It wasn't a lie. In 1916, Zeus ensured this little cut of America's wilderness was in federal hands so his mother could do with it as she pleased. She left it alone until the turn of the millennium. Uncle Fred got some part of Texas, where he keeps his cattle, and the other gods had their own little places. According to Uncle Fred, Hera and Hermes had to split Vegas since both of their domains were so highly valued there. You don't look like an Indian. The boy said before spluttering. No, not that you aren't or have to be to own land out here. Wow. Wow. Naruto blinked, dumbfounded by the teen's unintentional racism. He leaned back on his foot. Maybe I should just call Bruno back so he can finish the job. No, no. Wait. Please. I'm sorry, I don't even want to be here, okay? My parents dragged me out here and. Naruto rolled his eyes at the sob story that the guy was letting out. He went to the snare's counterweight and pulled out a Swiss Army knife. A simple flick of his wrist and the rocket scientist was brought back down to earth. Ow. Brace yourself. Naruto drawled, folding the knife from his utility tool away and tucking it back in his pocket. He walked over to the downed boy and watched him get to his feet. Welcome back to Earth, Icarus. Have a nice flight. Hoo-wah. Never mind. Naruto rolled his eyes. Not a demigod, just a boy. He was no longer interesting. He started lifting his headphones back up when the boy spoke again. Wait. He scrambled to his feet. Durable kid, the mortal got a smidge of respect for walking off a fall like that. Can you show me the way back to the visitors center? I say let him rot. Naruto was tempted to do just that. The teen in front of him, though durable, was an idiot and had some serious issues with his thought process. Unfortunately, if he was left to wander around he could inadvertently bring attention to the pack. The broken phone he found a mile up the hill was pretty pricey. Curse your bleeding heart for the dum-dums. The fox grumbled. Should have let him rot. Or become bear food. That'd just make the bears sick. What? My jeep's parked nearby. Naruto walked past him, ignoring the bewildered look on his face. The sooner he got this moron out of the woods, the better. When he realized the boy wasn't following, he turned and scowled at him. You coming? That got him moving. So, my name's Jeremy. Don't care. Look, if this is about that India Native American comment, I'm sorry. I was just chased by a wolf. You provoked him. I didn't do anything. You ran. Naruto glanced at him. Know what else runs? Quote. No. Pray. Helios, Selene, Cthulhu, Primus, someone save him from this mortal boy's stupidity. Prey runs. Oh. The rest of the trip was made in blissful silence. June 28, 2008. Percy Jackson lamented his luck. Why couldn't his summers just be normal? First off, his school orientation and by proxy the movie day he and Annabeth had planned was ruined by a couple of goat-legged cheerleaders called Empisa. Then, they got into a fight while fighting giant scorpions and fell down a hole. Turns out that hole was an entrance to the labyrinth, because of course it was, and had to be investigated before the Titan army could use it to flank the demigods. Annabeth was chosen to lead the quest to find the labyrinth's creator. Both he and Talia immediately volunteered to help her. Long story short, they had a bunch of zany interactions, some jerk named Janice, a monster named Camp, a sphinx that could double as a game show host, and even Hephaestus, before Percy got blown up by a minor eruption he caused at Mount St. Helens. He recovered from that little incident in Ogagia. Once he returned to camp, he told Talia and Annabeth what he learned from Hephaestus, a clear-sighted mortal could navigate the labyrinth. Annabeth first suggested he ask his mom to help them, but he politely, yet fervently, shot down that idea. Then she suggested they ask the son of Artemis, that Naruto guy who'd apparently known Egyptian and Norse gods. Percy's dad had gotten super miffed when he asked what Valkyries were, to guide them, but Talia said he's been missing since January. Talia seemed a bit upset about it for some reason when she mentioned it, her thunderous scowl looking more like Zeus. Resigned and out of options, Annabeth agreed to return to the labyrinth once more with his help from his friend Rachel Elizabeth Dare. She wasn't too happy about it, for whatever reason, but at least Talia and Rachel got on all right. From there, after a fight in which he got the worst spoil ever from his wrestler of a half-brother, they found Daedalus in his workshop. He'd already chosen his side and fled before they could stop him. Disheartened, Rachel led them out of his workshop to the Garden of the Gods, and the sun was low on the horizon. They walked along a road for what felt like forever before they found a sign. Colorado Springs, 5 miles. Percy groaned, reading the sign. You couldn't have led us somewhere closer to the area. Annabeth asked Rachel with a frown. The red-headed, clear-sighted girl shrugged. Hey, it's not like I'm thrilled about making a 5-mile hike either. Really? I'm shocked. Don't you want to experience the planet you're trying to save? I've seen it before. It's pretty, but I'd rather not make another hike through it. Annie, Talia put a hand on her shoulder, interrupting whatever retort she was going to make, and arched her eyebrow. Why don't we try hitchhiking? Maybe Hermes will smile on us. Percy frowned. Given what happened over winter, he wasn't too sure about it. Accidental or not, Talia did kick Luke over a cliff. Gods didn't like it when that sort of thing happened to their kids. You think? Annabeth asked all the same. Anything's worth a shot, right? Annabeth nibbled on her lip and nodded. They went to the edge of the road and, after digging around in her pocket for some drachma, Annabeth looked up. O Hermes, swift god of travelers, grant us a safe journey with a trustworthy mode of transport. After a tense moment, the drachma vanished. And now we wait. Annabeth sighed. Rachel was staring at her, a red brow quirked. Not keen on waiting. While my home is going to be attacked. Cold gray eyes glared daggers at the mortal. No, not really. Annabeth, play nice. Talia nudged her. Percy stifled a laugh when she grumbled something too fast for him to catch. Talia arched a brow. Where in the world did you learn that sort of language? From you and Whiskers. Annabeth smirked. You guys weren't very quiet whenever you bickered about watch duty. Oh, you little. Whatever form of retaliation Talia was going to give was cut short as she paused and looked to the northeast. Do you guys hear that? The birds chirping. Percy frowned. No offense, Talia, but this isn't Lord of the Rings. Giant eagles are not going to save us. He paused and considered that for a minute. Well, maybe you. Not me. God save us if you're supposed to be the chosen one, your head is full of kelp. She rolled her eyes and stuck a hand out into the street with her thumb up. That's Lars Ulrich's drumming. Percy strained his ears and faintly heard the drumming she was talking about. It was accompanied by a fast guitar. Honestly, quite the toe-tapping beat, and it was actually getting louder. Sure enough, a deep blue Jeep Wrangler popped up over the hill in the distance. Percy thought it was a great color on any car, but this one stood out. Who listens to Metallica while driving? Rachel asked. Someone with a good taste in music. Talia said, her hitchhiking thumb turning into a wave. Hey, come on, stop. The Jeep rolled past them before it pulled to a stop. The brake lights flipped on and it floored in reverse before stopping again in front of them. Percy blinked when he saw the driver, who stared at them in return. Well, he thought. I guess Naruto's not missing anymore. Reunion. The word on its own is often associated with the massive social gathering held to celebrate and reflect on the end of one's period of life. Or it could be used to refer to the process of bringing two halves back into one whole. Typically, though, it is used in regard to two or more people, usually those of the opposite sex, coming together after a long period of separation. Some consider the reunion to be a conclusion, the end of a story, but those few are mistaken. After all, one of the greatest stories in the eyes of many Olympians is that of the reunion of King Odysseus of Ithaca with his wife, the faithful Penelope. June 28, 2008. Talia didn't know who she was expecting to see behind the wheel when the Jeep, blaring Metallica's Ride the Lightning, pulled over, but it definitely wasn't Whiskers. He clearly shared her thoughts on the matter, judging by the dumbfounded stare he leveled her with. They stared at one another for a good moment, the idling engine and thrash metal being the only brakes in the wilderness, quiet. As Talia stared at him, she made note of the aesthetic changes he'd gone through. His left ear now had another piercing beneath the silver cuff and he had lost the silver band he wore around his head. He'd also gained a scar in his right eyebrow and there was yet another silver piercing beside it. He looked good with those new piercings. Okay, Talia's rational brain interrupted her hormones, train of thought. We've been staring at him for too long. Time to say something. Whiskers, Talia, what are you doing here? Whiskers asked her at the same time she asked him. Talia felt her ears burn and glared at him. Didn't he realize that she was the one asking questions? She got up to the passenger door and braced herself on it. What am I doing here? I asked you first. He did it again. The sheer gall of this guy. Talia leaned in through the window, reaching across the seat to poke him in the arm to get her point across. Whiskers, stop copying me and answer my questions. Talia, why in the world are you guys out here? Quote. This is better than How I Met Your Mother. Rachel Elizabeth Dare, Percy's clear-sighted mortal girlfriend, with emphasis on the space in the middle for Annie's sake, commented from her spot on the side of the road. It was then Talia seemed to realize the precarious position she'd put herself in. Here she was, leaning in through the passenger's side window, her rear end sticking out, and her torso stretched across the seat so that her face was inches from Whiskers. She could feel the warmth of his breath on her skin and noticed that it took considerable effort to jab her finger into his arm. Like, Hoover Dam, that was firm. You should have seen them flirting when we were walking through Hephaestus' junkyard. Apparently, Talia was going to be burying her two-timing cousin before the day was done. Shame Percy had to get the worst aspects of her sea-ruling uncle. Poor Annabeth would be so lonely without him. Hopefully, she'd bounce back. Oh, I've got to hear this. Never mind. It was apparent Annabeth had also chosen death. Talia was going to miss the little snarker when she was gone. She would be kind and bury the two's corpses together. Whether they would remain so would be in Hades' hands. Yes. Thank the gods for Whiskers' ability to break these awkward silences. I take it that you guys need a lift for a quest. Was he asking her? What does she do now? Gawk. No, she tried that. That didn't get her anywhere. Think, Talia, think. Got it. Quick. Respond like the strong, confident, and independent young woman you are. Why yeah. Talia breathed. Stupid and $% hormones. Okay. Whiskers blinked. You can stop leaning in through the window now. Oh, right. Talia casually slid her torso back out until her Converses hit the asphalt. The lock clicked and she popped the passenger door open. I call shot. That is not happening, kelp head. Talia snorted as she climbed in and claimed her seat. The seat. The shotgun seat. Yes, that. Huh, and the seat wasn't too bad. Pretty comfortable. Yeah, riding shotgun ruled. Her smirk returned as the two dead demigods walking, one grumbling about unfairness under his breath, and the potential witness to their homicide climbed into the back. Pete Percy. Whiskers corrected himself on the name so fast Talia almost missed it. He was meeting the clueless green eyes of the demigod in the back through the mirror. His lips pulled up in a small half-smile when he looked at the next walking corpse. Annabeth. Great to see you both again. He frowned when he looked at the other mortal. You. I don't know. Pleased to meet you. The girl grinned a toothy grin. Talia had the sudden, and bizarre, urge to knock a few of those teeth out. Geez, did she get some kind of psychopathic rage from her father or was that residual insanity from that woman? I'm Percy's friend. Rachel Elizabeth Dare. Dare. Whiskers turned around in his seat to look at her. Her smile fell and Talia's urge to commit assault on the clear-sighted girl dwindled. Dare Enterprises, Dare. I don't associate myself with my father's company. Rachel crossed her arms. Talia gave her points for her rebellious nature. She lost more for the next words she said with another smile. But since you know about it, I guess you're one of those hot activists that'd be on the news. Weird, the murderous urge had returned. Oh, terrific. Bunch of teenagers in the backseat. You're right, this was a great idea. Whiskers muttered to himself as he put the Jeep in gear and took them down the road. Talia wondered why he was talking to himself, but brushed it off as a survival quirk. His poor mortal mind could probably only handle so much. Hot activists? Percy asked softly, brows furrowed. Talia wouldn't be surprised if he died with that look on his face since he expressed it so often. Dare Enterprises is a large development company. Annabeth, the dutiful source of information that she was, explained. She looked over at Rachel, who shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. Guess that explains why you're taking such an interest in helping us. Trying to pay off the sins of your father. I'm Percy's friend, the mortal girl said with a far too pleasant smile. If I can help him, I will. Why is Annabeth glaring at her? The whispered question had Talia snapping her gaze at Whiskers with disbelief on her face. Are you serious? Come on, no way. He noticed a rolled ankle when he was 14. He couldn't have missed the tension between the three in his backseat. Right. Yes. Whiskers glanced at her with his stud-pierced eyebrow that looked far too good raised up in an arch. Talia, I haven't seen you guys in months. I don't know what's changed in the dynamics of demigods. That reminded Talia of something she had to give him that was long overdue. Suddenly and without warning, her fist lashed out and nailed him square in the shoulder. Slight miscalculation on her part. Now her knuckles hurt. Hoover Dam, that was a thick shoulder. Ow. Geez. What was that for? That's for disappearing for 6 months, you jerk. Talia snapped. She drove her fist into his arm again. Talia what? That's for all the crap I've had to deal with in high school. How is that my fault? Whiskers asked, scowling at her for a moment before he turned his attention back to the road. Talia wasn't sure what the answer to that was. She had agreed to be 17, and there was no way Whiskers could have foreseen her issues with the academic jump. However, given that admitting he wasn't in the wrong for going AWOL on her essentially boiled down to a matter of protecting her pride, she couldn't let him know that. Hence, she adhered to the rule of 3 and punched him again. Gods. He scowled and glared daggers at her. Talia, I am driving. I don't care. She scowled at him and dang near punched him once more for good measure. You left. Again. As a concerned passenger, I feel like this is something you two should work out without endangering us, liable witnesses, and off the road. Your death is going to be so painful, Percy. I'm not even kidding. Talia growled, glaring with sparking eyes at her cousin where he sat between the two girls. He scowled at her, but held his hands up and leaned back. Her glare shifted back to the driver. What happened to being there, huh? Well, since my home in Pennsylvania was destroyed while I was away and Mom's plan was shot down by your dad, I had to move. Whiskers snapped back at her. She felt her nostrils flare. It wasn't like she wanted her dick of a deity dad to ban him from camp. He huffed and turned his eyes back to the road. Since I was essentially homeless, Uncle Fred got me a hotel room in Jersey City. You moved to Jersey. Percy's nose scrunched up in disgust. Annabeth. Whiskers glanced up in the mirror. Do me a favor and slap your friend for me. Ever dutiful, Annabeth gave Percy a smack upside the head. Ow. Annabeth. You interrupted him, seaweed brain. Use your manners. Annabeth huffed. Sorry about that. He's still learning. The look of confused betrayal on Percy's face was nothing short of hilarious. It took a lot of willpower for Talia not to laugh out loud. Not difficult, considering she was still quite upset at Whiskers. Thanks, Annie. Whiskers nodded at her in the mirror. He glanced back at Talia before looking at the road once more. Anyway, yeah, Uncle Fred moved me into a hotel in Jersey City. After that, things got complicated. You did something stupid, didn't you? Talia snorted. His eyes flicked to her in a way, but he didn't answer. She crossed her arms and smirked. She had him now. You did. You did something stupid and got kicked out. No, I did. Okay, yes, maybe being arrested for manslaughter does count as doing something stupid. Pretty sure Alf took care of that, though. Whiskers frowned. At least, I hope he did. Manslaughter. Talia, Annabeth and Percy repeated incredulously. Alf. Rachel Elizabeth Dare's eyebrow shot up. Are you talking about that old 80s sitcom? No, Whiskers glanced at Talia, silently asking who this girl was. Talia sympathized. Sure, Red was nice and all, but her presence really did kind of throw off their dynamic. Still, she shrugged in response, telling him to go for it with a roll of her hand. Whiskers cleared his throat. No. He's someone I'm not allowed to talk about. Another god. Talia frowned. No, wait, that's not important, there was a more pressing query to investigate. You got arrested for manslaughter. Yes, that. Thank you, Annabeth. They were mafia goons and ogres. Whiskers scowled. They shot up my hotel room while I was making lunch. I was defending myself. An ogre like Shrek? Percy asked. Those are real. You guys call them something else. Whiskers shrugged. Personally, I think it's insensitive to Canadians. You mean, Lestrigonians? Annabeth asked, arching a brow. Yeah, Whiskers nodded. I think calling them ogres is more appropriate. What if you meet a few actual Canadians? Or Canadian demigods? You don't think they go around calling them Canadians, do you? Quote. That's a good point, Annabeth frowned. Why do we call them Canadians? How did that start? Wait, hold on, back up. Rachel Elizabeth Dare frowned. Why did the mob shoot your hotel room? Talia frowned. That was a very good question. She looked at Whiskers for his reaction. I beat up their boss at a grocery store after he threatened the cashier with a gun. He shrugged. Of course he did. She pinched the bridge of her nose. Whiskers, did you ever think it was a good idea to, I don't know, not get involved in fighting the mafia? Talia asked, glaring at him. Whiskers looked at her, his pierced brow arched once more. I didn't know he was with the mafia until the rest of his goons and their ogres showed up to kill me. He looked back at the road. Anyway, after Alf bailed me out, he got me a job in Boston. Boston. My cousin lives there, Annabeth said, perking up from her muttered train of thought. Huh, that had to be the first Talia's ever heard of Mr. Chase's family extending to more than his wife. Does he? That would have been great to know. Whiskers huffed. Doesn't matter. I'm never going back to Boston. Why? What's wrong with Boston? Percy asked. He tilted his head and added. Aside from their baseball team. Can't say. Can't or won't? Talia asked, scowling. Was he keeping secrets again? She thought they were past that. If he was getting another punch in the arm. Driving be damned. Can't. Whiskers grunted. Mom told me to keep what happened in Boston to myself. She even bribed me. Bribed you? Talia asked. Whiskers pointed at the piercing on his face. This replaced the circlet. Artemis didn't know it yet, but she'd just become Talia's favorite Greek god. Okay, you keep talking about your mom and Uncle Fred, but I've never heard of a god named Fred. Rachel frowned. Talia took pity on her and turned to look her in the eye. Whiskers is the son of Artemis. Quote. I'm not sure which implication from that sentence surprises me the most. The red-headed girl blinked. That you just told me the goddess of virgins had a kid, that the god Apollo goes by Fred, or that the aforementioned goddess named her child, Whiskers. Percy and Annabeth started giggling like the immature teenagers they were. Talia couldn't stop the grin that formed on her face. She glanced at Whiskers and oh, Hoover damn, he was blushing. That was too no, not cute. Talia didn't think he was cute. Well, not more than he usually was, damn it hormones, go take a cold shower. Thanks, Talia. Thanks so much. Whiskers glared at her from the corner of his eyes. He glanced up at the mirror to meet Rachel's eyes. In order. I'm adopted, it's his favorite alias, my name is Naruto, and Tree Girl here. Talia scowled at him as Percy and Annabeth's giggles doubled in volume. Did he have to use that stupid nickname for her? It made her chest ache hearing it. Is the only one that can call me that and get away with it. What? What about me? Annabeth tried to pout despite not having recovered from her giggle fit. You laughed. You lost the right. Talia laughed. She also came up with it. Much as I hate it, we have to respect the artist's rights. This guy gets it. Rachel nodded. Talia, an artist? Percy asked with a snort. Talia scowled at him. Wanna see me make a Picasso out of your face, Jackson? Because I will. Tree Girl, please do not turn my car into a crime scene. Whiskers drawled, before uttering lowly. Even if he deserves it. I deserve it. Apparently Percy heard him. What did I do? Your suggestion at Solstice. My you're still mad about that. Yes. That was months ago. Can't help how I feel. Whiskers shrugged. What suggestion? Rachel asked. Percy huffed and crossed his arms. That his mom turns him into a girl so he can join the hunt and then change him back to a boy to get around Zeus' decree. Percy explained. It'd work, right? It wouldn't. Annabeth sighed. Whiskers' uncle. Annabeth. Whiskers warned and Talia smirked triumphantly at her best friend from her seat. The daughter of Athena pouted at her. Naruto's uncle, she corrected herself with a frown. Apollo made Artemis swear an oath on the Styx not to change him into a girl. They never specified for how long, so any change would likely risk her breaking that oath. Wow, no, yeah. You kind of deserve it. Rachel snorted. Percy frowned at her and she shrugged. That's a terrible loophole, barely one if it's got a consequence. Not to mention the neurochemical cocktail whiplash he'd get from that series of biological transformations would probably break his brain. Ah, isn't that sweet, Whiskers? She thinks you have a brain. Talia smirked at the blonde boy. Clearly, she wasn't listening to your story about the time your hotel room got shot up for attacking a mob boss. Whiskers let out a mock laugh before he cranked the stereo's volume up and grumbled under his breath. Content with the small victory, Talia chuckled to herself and enjoyed the drive. She closed her eyes as the vocals of Hetfield, Hammett and Burton filled her ears. This was actually pretty nice. She could see herself doing this all year instead of being in school. Just her, some good music, and the road. Yeah, that sounded great. The only way it could be better was if Whiskers was there with her. I looked away for 1 second and came back to find you having daydreams about your hunk. I really am good at what I do. A familiar titter echoed in her head. Talia's happy thoughts immediately turned sour for the goddess of love. Oh, don't fret, my dear. Your hunky boy toy is all yours, for the next 20 minutes. Enjoy them while you can. The implications in her words left a swirl of dark feelings in Talia's gut. Only Talia can call you Whiskers, huh? The fox snorted. What would you say to your mother if she ever asked you about that? That Uncle Fred told me all about how overlooked artists' rights are. Naruto grumbled lowly. He rubbed his face, confused by the heat that he felt. Didn't he just get the heater fixed in this thing? Why would mom even care? Even the bitch wasn't this obstinate. The fox rumbled lowly, and Naruto furrowed his brows further, but stopped himself from interrupting when it spoke louder. Because, boy, that little creative artist of yours is female. So, old sage, preserve me. The fox growled. She is radiating pheromones, you nose-blind idiot. How are you going to get your degree if I have to explain this to you? Naruto frowned. Nose-blind. What? Talia didn't exactly smell any different. Sure, the human nose wasn't as good as others in the animal kingdom, but Naruto was raised by the goddess of the hunt and trained further by the king of Alfheim. His nose was, in the words of his uncle, up to snuff, compared to others. Naruto took an experimental whiff of the air, catching the scents of those riding in his interior. The son of Poseidon still smelled like the salty sea breeze, Annabeth like a freshly cracked book, and Red, actually, she didn't have much of a distinct scent. Definitely mortal, then. Still, he thought about what he remembered of Talia's scent and shook his head. The fox was clearly mistaken, because she still smelt like the lingering dew after a thunderstorm. As he was thinking about this, he pulled into a public lot in Colorado Springs and parked. Once the others got out, he grabbed his backpack and slung it over his shoulder. Noticing their stares, he arched an eyebrow and shrugged. I've got a class in an hour. That's why I was driving to the city in the first place. You're in summer school. Talia seemed surprised by it. He looked at her, a mite annoyed with the implication of what her question meant about his intellect. College. He adjusted his bag as they started walking towards a cafe. His stomach rumbled, and he thought about the instant ramen cup he'd left out earlier. Bruno had his table tricked down, and now he had to find a way to keep the beta wolf from eating his food while his back was turned. I'm working on getting a bachelor's in wildlife biology. While also being in high school. Percy asked. Poor guy looked dizzy at the thought of juggling both types of classes. Naruto sympathized. It seemed like a lot to him too, before he stumbled across the GED application and swiftly nipped that concern in the bud. Nah, I got my GED months ago. Oh, did you? Talia turned to smirk at Annabeth. The blonde girl was scowling at him like he'd committed an atrocity. The daughter of Zeus crossed her arms with an air of smugness. Hear that, Annie? Whiskers got into college just fine with his GED. I said it would be harder, Talia, not impossible. Maybe for Ivy Leagues, but not if you go for a partnership with a community college. Naruto shrugged at the daughter of Athena's look of betrayal. What? Pikes Peak's community college is way more convenient than any official school, and I don't have to dedicate a lot of time to it. Naruto, Annabeth frowned. How is anyone going to take your credentials seriously? That is small-time thinking, Chase. Red shot at her as Naruto led them into the cafe. Trust me, most employers don't really care what school you went to as long as you sell yourself right. Red knows the score. Naruto nodded. He slung his pack on the back of a chair and claimed a seat at the table, before ordering some soda and food for them all. He looked at the three demigods and the lone mortal with them. You know, we never got around to why you guys are in Colorado in the first place. We were in the labyrinth. Red told him before any of the others could speak. Looking for its creator. David Bowie. Naruto asked with a frown. He wasn't huge on the man's music. Mostly because when he was younger, Uncle Fred loved to put Moonage Daydream on to mess with him whenever they drove somewhere. Daedalus, Annabeth said with a scowl on her face. But he's gone. Hiding. From K the Crooked One's army, Percy added. At his words, a look of remorse flashed across Talia's face and he looked at her. Everything okay? Talia hesitated before giving her response. Two words that changed little in the grand scheme, but so much for their group. Luke's alive. I'm gonna need details on that. Naruto deadpanned. Annabeth and Percy started to recount their adventure, Percy adding in dreams he was having, but through it all Naruto focused his attention on Talia, even if only out of his peripherals. The way she messed with the offered utensils or fidgeted in her seat. Her eyes were locked on the table. Whatever had happened between her and Luke in the labyrinth had really bothered her. This Luke kid sounds like he needs to be eaten. The fox muttered. Don't tempt me. Naruto mumbled. You'd be willing to go with us? Annabeth asked, eyes lightening. Talia's own eyes seemed to brighten up. Uh-oh, Naruto did it again. He lost track of the conversation. No. Annabeth and Talia looked more than a little disappointed. He shrugged. Chances of winding up in camp are too high if I go with you guys. No offense, but I'll pass on getting the permanent eviction from life. Oh, I can tell you there's a weird glow around the mining and industry museum. Never got a bad feeling from it, so I let it be. He shrugged. That, and I'm not interested in minerals. Talia snorted. Says the guy who ate lead and lived. Funny. Does that mean you want to be a forester, tree girl? Naruto asked. He chuckled at the way her scowl made her freckled nose scrunch up. His eyes flicked to the clock behind her and he cursed. His class was soon. I gotta go or I'll be late. Museum closes in 20 minutes. Better get moving before you pull A, B, and E. We literally do that all the time though. Shouldn't the mist cover us? Percy asked with a frown. Naruto pointed at Red. She's literally a mist repellent. That explains the cheerleaders. There was not enough context in the world to make that sentence make sense to him. As the questers started to leave, Naruto reached out and put a hand on Talia's arm, holding her up. He gave her a small smile when she arched her brow. Hang on 1 second. Naruto dropped his pack to the ground. He pulled a notebook out and ripped some paper before scrawling his number on it. He gave it to her and at her confused look he shrugged. I promised I'd always be there for you, and I blew that. Sorry. But now, we can talk whenever you want. Preferably, without the punching. Thanks, Whiskers. The way Talia smiled then seemed to make time slow. He noticed her freckles really added a charm to her features. That's odd. All of a sudden his chest hurt and his heart rate had spiked, but precipitation hadn't increased so it wasn't an adrenaline rush. Weird. I can't believe it. You're worse than the bitch. What was that supposed to mean? His silent inquiry went unanswered. By the time Naruto snapped himself from his confusion, Talia had already pocketed his number and jogged off after the others. She really made those black jeans work. Gods, his eyes closed as he realized what he was doing. He pinched his nose and hung his head. Damn it. Uncle Fred, Alf, whoever is the cause of my hormones. Stop. Rachel Elizabeth Dare liked to think herself quite observant. She was quick on the uptake due to her father's demanding upbringing. Few could say she was easily fooled, as evidenced by her dismissal of Chase's subtle, belittling. Hence why, while Percy and Chase were arguing about that, Luke, creep behind them, she asked the question that's been in her mind since Talia first leaned into Naruto's jeep. So how long did you two date before you broke up? She asked, looking at Talia. What? The 17-year-old looked at her, wide-eyed. You and the studded stud back there. Rachel threw her thumb over her shoulder before crossing her arms. You guys were together, right? I mean, the way you two were making googly eyes at each other was nauseatingly sweet for a couple that broke up. I think I got a cavity just from watching. We weren't. Whiskers and I never. Oof, Talia lost a lot of her thus far stacked cool points with that denial. She had it bad for that guy, and it was painfully obvious he wasn't any better. A bit more socially awkward than she was, but that made it kind of sweeter. You never dated? Rachel asked, a bit incredulous. It wasn't that she didn't believe Talia, but rather that she couldn't believe her. The girl missed out on trying anything with that guy. Why? Because she was a demigod and he wasn't. That's stupid. There was a reason Rachel wasn't just going to roll over for Chase. Percy was a decent guy who was cute to boot, anyone would be lucky to snag a guy like that. Until he said otherwise, it was open season. And no offense to the daughter of Athena, but Rachel had gone hunting before. No. We're just friends. Is that so wrong? What do you care? Geez, she'd never known freckles could glow. Did her freckles do that? She hoped not. Talk about embarrassing. It isn't and I don't. Rachel shrugged. She just felt that life was worth living with no regrets. Who knows what could happen the next day? It's why she put her all into every project she was part of. Just thought you two had some chemistry. He looked like he had it bad. Okay, maybe she was stirring the pot here, but Rachel felt like they had to at least try. What? Hold on, did Talia, I can shoot lightning from my fingertips, Grace just squeak. Rachel was wrong. Talia didn't have it bad, she was doomed. And if Talia was like this, she could only imagine what Naruto was like. She kind of wished she was a telepath just so she could get their thoughts on the matter. It was bound to be very entertaining. Come on, you're telling me you didn't notice how he'd always smile a little whenever he looked at you. Rachel tilted her head in thought. Okay, maybe not smile, but he perked up a bit. No, we're just friends. Talia protested. Rachel arched a brow, was it her imagination or did she detect a hint of disappointment? Better give her another subtle nudge. I guess if that's how you feel, that's all you'll be then. She shrugged. I'm sure he'll get over it and meet someone in college. It always happens. Aren't you a freshman? Talia scowled at her. Yeah, but I still have ears and friends outside of Percy. Rachel smiled back. A glint of light caught her eye at the next intersection. She looked back at the boy in question and Chase, who'd taken to walking in silence with their thoughts for the past few minutes. Come on, you two, we've got some road to cover. To be continued.